with 6-man mission.
Yeah, it will be the first flight for one of the astronauts
总指挥
this
长
time.
同志，
Chief Commander,
我们奉命
we
执
are
行
the crew
神舟
to
13
carry
号
out the Shenzhou-13 manned space mission.
准备完毕，
Now we are
请
ready.
您指
Please
示
indicate
中国人民解
from
放军
Chinese People's Liberation
航天
Army
大队航天员
Astronaut Corps
翟志刚、
Taikonaut 翟志刚
航天员王
Taikonaut
亚平，
王亚平
航天员叶光
Taikonaut
富，
叶光富
出发。
Go.
是
Yes, Commander.
敬礼。
Salute.
There you
Now
have
they
it.
got the go-ahead to go for this mission. A little bit about the Taikonauts this time. We heard from Dai Zhigang, who is the commander this time. He commanded the Shenzhou-13 space mission in 2008 and was the first Chinese astronaut to conduct a spacewalk.
Veteran space travel.
Absolutely, lots of experience under his belt. The female astronaut you see is Wang Yaping. She will be the first female astronaut to visit Tianwen orbiting port module of the space station. She's also China's second female astronaut.
There you see the press corps. Hundreds of journalists are there. Also seeing them off are, the ground staffs who work at the base and their family members, military personnel. They're all there. Many of them actually participated in this particular mission.
And the last astronaut on the crew, Ye Guangfu, he was an Air Force pilot. He was recruited as a trainee for China's Astronaut Center in 2010, qualified to be an astronaut in 2014. Shenzhou-13 mission, this mission that we're witnessing today, will be his first space flight.
So a mix of newcomer and veteran travelers. They make a great team.
Absolutely.
And now they are waving to the crowds, big smiles on them, looking confident. They will be hopping on that minivan, which will take them to the launch pad momentarily.
Looks like they're all in good spirits tonight.
And the weather looks pretty nice. I mean, it's quite warm. And Mr. Xu, how do you see this condition? Is it an ideal condition for launch?
Yes, we do see there's no strong wind and also no rain. That means that the weather conditions are very good for the upcoming mission. Of course, in 3 months, 3 hours, things could change, but I see there's no problem at this moment for the mission. And also the astronauts are dressed up in such a way that they're going to be in the capsule, and the shoes is only from the gate. From this gate to the capsule itself, and then the shoes will be
Outdoor
removed.
boots.
Yes, exactly, outdoor boots, and the boots is only for Earth.
Only for Earth.
They will get held actually taking the boots off before they enter the cabin.
Exactly, and they will have a new, very clean boots, and for the mission and for the launch.
Because it's hard to maneuver, a spacesuit is quite heavy. Actually, how much do they weigh?
It's kind of clumsy, but the spacesuits are varied from different ones. This one, roughly 20 to 30 kilos, but with the space astronauts, EVA suits can weigh some 100 kilos. So they're different. But once you're in microgravity environment, this is you don't feel it. But it's kind of clumsy once you're in it.
So this is the suit for takeoff, for re-entry. This is for intravehicular activities.
Exactly. Once you're in the suit, you can even pressurize yourself and with a supply of oxygens and control of temperatures. But that's basically it. It's not for EVA and for others. So once you're in the station, you can dress up quite casually. But this is for launching and landing missions.
And as you can see, it's all dark there. Why did they choose this launch window? Sometimes they leave during the day, in the morning, sometimes at night.
Yeah, that's a very good question, because the station itself is orbiting about 400 kilometers above Earth. So it circles about 96 minutes per cycle. So that means in every 1.5 hours you see sunrise and sunset. But that varies with the apogee and perigee, because it's not a complete circle. It's like a elliptic shape. So you have to rendezvous and catch up with a precise timing of the of the Shenzhou-13 with the Tianhe. So that is a calculation of the orbit, the conditions, and the rendezvous timing, and as well as the overpassing of Chinese territories for TT&C purpose. So all of these are circles that you cross together. So this is the only window that is optimal.
Yeah, it looks like the motorcade is moving its way to the rocket. It's a couple of kilometers from the stand of ceremony to the site where that rocket launches.
Roughly 7
kilometers.
But they're going at a relatively slower speed, under 50 miles per hour.
It's going to be 10 or 15 minutes to get there.
Why are they going at such a slower speed? Is there a particular reason?
There's no particular reason, but I think it's in store for the quicker speed that they're going to be in once you're in the rocket. So they're going to be traveling at supersonic speed once they're on
they
it.
don't mind.
But take it slowly. It's make sure that there's nothing goes wrong. There's no need for hurry. The time is well planned, and there are schedules and procedures to follow. And personnel and staff and supporting staff to be there at the right timing. And also, this mission, of course, you can see that safety has been considered as a priority, rocket-wise and escape-wise. And escape-wise, there are many routes that the astronauts can escape on the ground in the first few seconds of the launching, and even at the final stage. So we see there are many safety precautions has been taken into consideration, in particular for the human missions. Rocket has to be human rated, and all safety has been considered as priority. Even this mission, Shenzhou-13 rocket, is a backup of Shenzhou-12.
It looks like people are lining the streets as the motorcade moves to the launch site. A lot of enthusiasm, major cheering as the motorcade moves its way to the launch site.
We see some kids as well, kids who go to school here at the base. More people are coming to the streets, cheering for them. This is
It's a great excuse not to go to bed so early on a Friday.
the shared
Cheer
enjoy.
this on. It's a proud moment for the Chinese, absolutely.
And earlier we did get a bird's eye view of the Wentiange, but you can't probably see it that clearly. But during the day, the view is incredible. It's like an oasis in the Gobi Desert. They were really putting out all the efforts there to make sure that the astronauts stay at the base as refreshing, as comfortable as it is, thanks to years of afforestation and tree planting.
What do you think they're doing in the bus right now?
Great view. That bridge is called the Rainbow Bridge by the local people. Its formal name is called the Shenzhou Friendship Bridge. Shenzhou Youyi Dajiao, right? It's in the shape of a spaceship, really symbolizing the spirit of the Shenzhou missions.
Look how pretty.
Yeah. Well, I think they are chatting a bit. They look pretty chill. Not nervous. I think they've been working
Because
with
two
each
of them
other
have
for
done
years.
this before.
Yes.
There's a new one on board. The other two could be
They're familiar with the
giving
drill.
him tips about last-minute preparations.
Yeah. And who else are sitting on that van with the astronauts?
Well, I think the servant people who provide the technical service
Who
to
assist with the astronauts.
And it's very good to see that they have motorcycles in front of the motorcade. And it's always nice to have motorcycles in front because I personally ride motorcycles. I always think,
I know.
yeah, I always think that riding a Harley Davidson and get
That
involved in
is cool.
space activity is the coolest thing to do.
Professor Xu, let's talk about the selection of the taikonauts. We had two scheduled flights this year. We're going to have two more next year. Will it always be a three-person crew, 3 taikonauts on each crew?
Well, this one is a three crew mission. Of course, that's the maximum capacity of the Shenzhou. And of course, China is developing a new generation crew capsule that is capable of putting 7 people at the same time. And they have done already a re-entry test, which means that they have dropped the capsule back to Earth from outer space already. So that is on the way of development. And currently we're using the 3 crew as maximum capacity, not only to conduct its scientific missions, but also to conduct EVA coordinations and also construction of the station. The more people you have, the better off you are with the construction process. So that is essential for a three crewed mission.
Can we talk about the makeup of this crew? What are the considerations behind having 2 people who've already done it and another person who has trained for this, obviously, who was probably at some point a backup choice?
Trained for 11 years.
Yes,
for that
previous
matter.
crews. What are the considerations for coming up with a combination of taikonauts on the crew?
Well, I think the combination has to be veteran plus newcomers. It is the same if you're traveling, like for example, if you're selling an ocean ship with 3 people only, you have to choose a person which is veteran and old hand, had experiences, and be able to command and communicate with the ground. And also, there's also a good combination of characters between the astronauts, so that they don't get into trouble once they're in space, because it's a confined space and it's only 3 people, and it's 6 months. So that is long for 3 people psychologically. Not only physically.
And they have to work well with each other instead of just being excellent at their jobs by themselves, right?
Yes, teamwork is very important for the astronauts. Once you're not there just to spend your time for nothing, but you're there to build a station. So teamwork and also well-trained and simulations on the ground, repeated exercise and experiments are essential for the crew. So newcomers is always welcome with energies, with innovative ideas, and also with good, maybe a good cooker is essential in the crew, because you need to change your taste once you're in outer space. There are many things that needs to be done in addition to scientific missions and performance of for example, the construction of the station itself.
And teamwork is especially critical when it comes to EVAs, because you work in pairs. When you conduct that spacewalk, one person stays behind to command, the other 2 walk outside of the module to conduct all this critical work together. It's not an individual assignment. It always comes down to how well a team does it together.
Yes, and also you need to have a very good confidence to your colleagues. They are able to support you, and also they have always to be prepared for emergency cases. For example, space debris or leakage of the spacesuit and many other things. So many factors has to be considered. So once you're in there.
Yeah, I think you're getting a visual of the launch tower, the really bright structure over there. They're getting close to the launch pad now as we speak. And we are about 2.5 hours till launch. Normally on a launch day, Mr. Xu, what would be the schedule for the astronauts? I mean, they had their dinner 6 hours before the launch. They put on their suits 3 hours prior to the launch. What else? What do they do on this special day?
Well, they normally get their heart rate checked periodically, so that they make sure that astronauts are not very nervous and have a nervous breakdown or anxieties or anything. So it makes sure that the astronauts are physically and psychologically ready for the mission. And also before that, they get plenty of rest, because they can't sleep overnight with the launching and with the rendezvous and docking. They can just take minutes of napping, but someone has to stay on the shift. So it's 6.5 hours after the launching. They will be rendezvous and docking with the station. After docking with the station, that is a key moment, of course. And then you have to open the hatch and check everything, and that it will extend that work for another 6 or 7 hours before they get a rest. So plenty of rest is very important before departure, and also suit up and meat, so meals and others, and also, like you have just seen, the farewell ceremonies and departures, and then after they get into the capsule, they also have to sit there for 2 hours to check out everything and wait for the rocket to be unlocked and ready to launch. So there are many procedures to follow, and I think they have done it many times, and the astronauts it's not the first time China sent astronauts to space. So they know the procedures. The old veterans would tell the young generations what to do and what to expect. And of course, there are thrilling moments. Once you experience the 4G launching, you will then all of a sudden, when the second stage engine shuts off, you get into microgravity environment. That's a very exciting moment.
Everything is floating.
Everything will be floating, and it is a once in a lifetime experience. And then you look forward to dock with the station. So that is something to look forward to, and of course they're excited, and they have to keep calm. Otherwise, they find you have a fast heart rate, and they will maybe change the astronauts.
I think we're getting very close to that launch
Right.
tower now as the motorway continues to make its way.
And these astronauts, they have been under what we call level 3 medical quarantine right ahead of the launch. What does that require? I mean, they have to keep a certain distance from everybody who's not under quarantine. Is that
Well, I'm
right?
not a quarantine expert, I know, but I have just heard from the journalists in front that they're saying that the press has been there for 2 weeks. I understand they
Wow.
have been quarantined or
Going
somehow
through quarantine procedure as well.
They have to stay there for a good time so that they don't bring anything into space, in particular with the COVID-19.
Even without the
cases.
pandemic, is that required for the press to do that 2-week quarantine?
It was not so strict at that moment, and quarantine was not considered a priority at that time. But this time, after that, even the cargo ship, they have to quarantine repeatedly, make sure that they are ready.
In terms of the work they do, the docking will be automatic, just like last time, right?
Yes, this time is the fast docking for 6.5 hours, and it's going to be like last time. It's controlled by ground. It's not a, manual rendezvous and docking. It's going to be automatic, and this is why this timing of launching it at 12:30 at this tomorrow morning. It's the calculation of the orbit of the Tianhe and the orbit of the Shenzhou-13 and the launching sequence. So it's the exact timing for the right window
I think,
for the fast
I think they are entering the south gate of the launch pad. They are getting really close to the launch tower. They're heading to the launch tower. As you can see, that blue giant steel structure over there. The team is led by those motorcycles. We've just passed through a series of landmarks at the Dongfeng Space City. And Professor Yang Yuguang is joining us here in the studio. Professor Yang, let me bring you into our discussion. Talk to us about, the personalities of the crew. I know you've met Wang Yaping, one of our astronauts there, the female astronaut there. What's she like in person?
Well, that it is very interesting, and today, that just several hours before Yaping posted a WeChat moment. So it is very interesting, that before the launch, she has a lot of preparation to do, and it is a very challenging task. Even at this moment, she can post a moment. It means that she is full of confidence, and also she is very prepared for this mission. I believe that she can fulfill the whole mission perfectly.
What did she say in that post on WeChat Moments?
She said she will be on a business trip for 6 months.
That's one long trip.
And also, she's always worrying about her daughter, a very lovely girl. So, but her daughter is so proud of her mother. And she said her mother will get some stars for her and even for her
Well, she literally
classmates.
asked her mother to reach for the stars this time and bring her back some. As far as I
Exactly.
know, Wang Yaping has promised her she will do just that.
And that's a good point because there are so many myths, right, about female astronauts. Some say that traveling in space will affect ladies' reproductive abilities, but both our two female astronauts, they are mothers, they have lovely daughters, they both gave birth after got back to the Earth. So that is not necessarily true.
Well, that's according to the criteria for selecting astronauts. The ideal female astronauts is those who have already married and also already have their kids. but it is not very necessary to have the kids. So you know that, as you mentioned, both our space girls Yaping and Liu Yang have when they came back to the Earth, and they have very healthy daughters, both of them. So in the future, also because you know that the Yaping and Liu Yang belongs to the second batch of China's astronauts. For the third batch, we will also have scientists and engineers. Also, I believe there are female astronauts there. So I think that's the criteria.
I think the crew has
is also
arrived
changing.
at the site. They just got out of the bus and are making their way to the launch tower. They will ascend apparently to the 9th floor. Is that correct? At the launch tower, and will enter.
Exactly.
请首长放心，我们坚决完
Please
成
rest assured,
神舟13号飞
we
行任
will
务。
definitely succeed in this mission. Salute.
我们在北京等你们凯旋而
We
归。
will be
祝一
waiting
切
for
顺
your
利。
safe return in Beijing. I wish you every success. Thank you.
There you have it. The crew of Shenzhou-13 mission being greeted by senior military officials at the launch pad. The officials saying, we will wait for your victorious return. And they are now hopping on that elevator, which will take them up to the entrance of the spacecraft, which is located, as you said, on the 9th floor of the launch tower. And this is an explosion-proof elevator, is that right, Professor Young?
Yes, you know that the launch complex is specially designed, and it also have to facing some special cases, as you mentioned.
Right.
Also, you know that there is an emergency escape channel for the ground crew and also for the astronauts. If anything happened to the launch vehicle, so they can escape to the underground close as soon as possible.
And that is the white tube on the left of your screen there. That is the emergency escape tube that Professor Young is talking about. So in a case of emergency, such as an impending explosion, they will slide down the tube to an underground bunker.
Do remember the fueling happened yesterday.
Right.
The Long March 2 have more than 450 tons of propellants. So that's very dangerous. So the ground staff, but you know that the ground staff can only leave about T-minus 30 minutes.
Right.
So during all this procedure, we have to dealing with the possible dangerous things.
So they have prepared for everything. And of course, it's not going to be a free fall. There are resistance material in that tube, so
Exactly.
they will reach to the bunker safely. And this tower is entirely made of steel, am I right, to withstand extreme forces during a rocket launch. It's said to be extremely stable.
Well, you know, as you mentioned, so if anything wrong happens to the launch vehicle, there may be some explosion. Also, you know that our emergency escape system use the solid rocket motors. So that's also a very dangerous article. So to dealing with these kind of things, we must make it reliable.
Now the taikonauts have reached the doorway. This is the 9th floor on that launch tower. They are in the company of personnel who will help them into the cabin.
Those persons are from the Astronaut Center in China. They're there to assist these astronauts.
5分钟准备完毕，
We're
天津。
hearing a series
5分钟
of
准备完毕，酒
status
泉。
reports
5分钟
actually
准备完毕，青山。
saying
5分钟
preparations
准
are
备完毕
done,
双
everything
层。
is going
5分
good.
钟准备完毕，5号。
They will be
5分钟
taking
准备完
seats
毕。
at that area where you get access to the entrance of the spacecraft. They will be doing some final status checks, taking off the protective boots, as Mr. Xu mentioned
各位注意
earlier.
计算机理论电脑检查，1分钟准备。
And that's exactly what they're doing right now. They'll be sitting down and with the help of the service personnel, be
And
taking down the boots.
you see those smaller cases, right? Those portable ventilation units. These astronauts are not using that this time.
40秒。
Usually they use the ventilation power supply from outside. You know that's what they are wearing is called the IVA spacesuit or intravehicular spacesuit. So when they get into the cabin, they can get the power supply and also ventilation from the spaceship. So now outside the spaceship, they also need this kind of a case.
Are we also getting visuals of inside the capsule?
Right on your right are the inside of the capsule. The upper right is showing you the orbital module. The bottom right is showing you the re-entry module with 3 seats. And on your left are the outside of the capsule, that big door on the fairing.
As you mentioned, the 3 seats. Please notice that each seat is compatible with the shape of the certain people.
Oh, is it?
Yes, it's specially designed for each astronaut. You can notice that the shape for the seats of Ms. Wang Yaping, you may notice that it may be a little bit different from Mr. Zhai Zhigang and Mr. Ye Guangfu.
Wow.
So it's not like an airplane where you can switch seats with, your neighbors.
So I guess Mr. Zhai Zhigang, the flight commander, will be sitting in the middle.
Exactly. The commander always sits in the middle.
And the 2 flight engineers sit on his sides. Which orders will they be going into the capsule usually?
Well, at least we can confirm that Mr. Zhai Zhigang will be the last one to entering the capsule, because you know that he is the commander, he should sit in the middle, and he must be the last one.
My assumption would be the lady first. But it's the 2 of them will, the 2 new ones, the younger ones will go in first, and the commander will go last to sit in the middle.
And normally, what kind of procedures do they go through at this stage? Oh, they're taking off the boots for the astronauts.
Yes, they're going to be slided in to the capsule, but with a plank or something,
Yes, as Yan Song has mentioned, there is a panel. You know that the whole spacecraft is closed by the payload fairing. So at current stage, we have a door on the side of the payload fairing, and there is a panel to connect the fairing and the orbital module. So the astronaut will go first into the orbital module from the side door, side hatch, and then go down to the hatch between the orbital module and the re-entry capsule, and then sit down.
Yeah, and on your left, you're seeing the launch tower. It hasn't opened yet, so you cannot see the white rocket just yet. But as we get close to time 0, those retractable platforms will open, revealing each part of the rocket.
And it's good that you mentioned about the rocket, and also the capsule. Probably you understand that they separated into 3 segments: the orbit module, the return capsule, and the service module. So all 3 are being covered right this moment by the fairing. So you see a complete rocket with a fairing in it. So that is the difficulty of the astronaut getting into it. And you heard of many of the audios from front. That is the drill for TT&C stations. They have a number of stations in China, and they have to drill and simulate the launch sequence many times. So we'll hear it many times. 5 minutes preparation and countdown. So that's the communication between the ground stations, so that make sure that once the ship is in orbit and in the launching sequence, there's no loss of signals, and we always keep communicating with the astronauts and the Shenzhou-13.
Right.
So that is what they're doing with the background audios.
And I think the ground staffs are putting those gloves into the spacesuit's pocket for the astronauts, and those gloves will be the ones they will be wearing during takeoff.
Yeah, they put it on the pocket of the thumb.
On their legs.
Yeah, on their legs.
And we just saw somebody pass through a giant yellow bag into the spacecraft, and I suppose that's for collecting those materials they won't be needing in space, like manuals, final checklists, like we've seen in previous missions. We're going to find out what they're going to be putting into that yellow
remember
bag.
with the last manned flight, they were flipping through manuals once they sat inside the capsule. They took their time to flip through a hard copy of the manual.
Exactly. That there are still a lot of work to do and very, very complex. So first, the most important thing is that, the importance of the IDA spacesuits is that if any leakage happened to the cabin, it can have the second protection to the astronaut's life. So we must, after they entering the re-entry capsule, they must check the tight sealing of the IDA spacesuit, and also check the communication, the voice of communication with the ground staff. So this is very important for all of them. And also there are other procedures to check the status of the spaceship.
All right, final preparations are underway as we speak, and our correspondent Ning Hong is joining us live from Jiuquan. Ning Hong, great to have you with us this hour. What are you seeing around you? What is the latest at the launch site?
Well, I'm now at about 1,500 meters away from the launch pad, and now the taikonauts have arrived at the launch pad. They're now preparing to board on the Shenzhou-13 spaceship. You can see the rocket now because it is still covered by the rotating support platform. And after the taikonauts boarded on the ship, and the platform will start to open one by one from top to the ground. And we are now approaching the two-hour countdown. And I've talked to the deputy chief designer of the rocket, who just returned from the launch pad, and he said that the final test of all systems about the power system have already completed. And now, as the taikonauts boarding on the ship, they will go through all systems checks again, and also power on the rocket, which means that the rocket is really standing by. The weather here is a little bit windy, but according to weather report at the window, that's about 23 past 12 o'clock. Well, the weather is good for launch, and it is a very accurate window because after the rocket liftoff, it will take about 10 minutes for the spaceship to break off from the rocket and then entering the orbit. It is a near Earth orbit, about between 200 kilometers to 356 kilometers above Earth, and then it takes another 6 hours for the spaceship to docking with the space station. Well, there are many firsts this time because this is the first time that female taikonauts will enter the Chinese space station, and also she will conduct spacewalks in the coming future. And that's what we learned here. Back to you.
Ning Hong, it's Zhong Shi in the studio. Let me ask this one, if I may. We've been looking at live pictures of the taikonauts' final preparation before they enter the capsule. They do look cool, calm, collected. Dai Zhigang has been drinking bottled water. A lot of the things are very similar to what we witnessed with the Shenzhou-12 crew last time in June. You've been talking to ground staff there in Jiuquan. You've been talking to key engineers of this particular mission. Is there a sense, because we successfully launched the mission in June, this is just a couple months away, there is an increased confidence level with everybody, with ground staff, with engineers, with support staff, with the taikonauts. And now they're getting ready to enter the capsule, Ning Hong, as we speak right now.
This is Ye Guangfu. Apparently, the newcomer is going into the capsule first.
And not lady first, apparently this time.
He was waving to the camera before entering the capsule. This is the orbital module. They're helping him getting in. It's a little bit hard to move and walk in that heavy space suit. This is the hatch connecting the re-entry module and the orbital module. He's going to slide into the re-entry module. Yes. And let's find out which seat he will be taking.
And you may notice this is a camera in the orbital module. You can see a lot of packages. So these are the objects needed for the independent flying during this phase, the food, supplies of the astronaut, and also some of the some of the equipment for the scientific research experiments. And also there are their private belongings.
He first landed on the middle seat and is now making his way to the seat on the left.
So he is sitting closest to us. This man has been under training for 11 years, but this is his first trip. There you have it. Ms. Wang Yaping also waving to the camera. She is the second to go in. Earlier they were having some waters because they will be staying in the capsule for about 2 hours before takeoff, and that's a long time.
It is. And they're taking time and caution with every movement now. There's no need to rush. Everything is planned down to the last detail.
And this is going to be an exciting trip for Wang Yaping. She is going to conduct a spacewalk by herself. But Mr. Xu, to date, women worldwide have only participated in about 40 spacewalks, right? But there have been more than 200 spacewalks. Why aren't we seeing more female astronauts conducting spacewalks?
Well, I think it's the comparison of the selection of astronauts in the process. Previously has always been Air Force pilots as priority. So that less of female astronaut has been selected. That is why also we see less female astronauts are performing activities in outer space. But that is also changing at this moment. And we are even giving priorities to women, for women in space, and lots of activities.
And some studies actually point out females may be better suited for space travels than their male counterparts for physiological and emotional reasons. Is that true?
Long durations could be true. I mean, women are more enduring in process in life, and also for men are maybe even more hot tempers, and they have, they get angry very easily. So psychologically, it could be a good thing for female astronauts to stay longer in outer space.
Yeah.
And also we see in many movies, aliens and all that, and see female astronauts are over there.
The
mission commander, also entering the capsule. Just now we saw Ye Guangfu lending a helping hand as Wang Yaping moved her way into position in the capsule. This is the last of 3 taikonauts on this crew, Shenzhou-13.
And Zhang will be staying in the orbital module for just a bit, checking off all the lists before heading into the re-entry module. That's the task of the flight commander. They're doing the final handovers. So it's fascinating, as Mr. Xu mentioned, women do demonstrate a higher tolerance for isolation and sensory deprivation, I guess. Research do suggest that women tend to have stronger hearts, so they're less susceptible to failure or stress, and they do show a higher tendency to bond with a certain group, create this sense of cohesiveness, and that could be a beneficial factor when you're up there living in space for 3 months.
Exactly, with a team of 3 and also with larger teams. You see International Space Station also have lots of crews and also lots of female astronauts very active over there. So they're performing equally well with the men in outer space.
But there's still a smaller portion of the entire picture. There are more than 500 astronauts worldwide, but only about 60 of them are women, a little over 10%. Why is that? Why aren't we seeing more female astronauts?
It's the process of selecting astronauts. I think once again it's been military oriented in the beginning, and also then they gradually change into civilian process of selecting astronauts. So that's the same situation anywhere. I mean, even at work and somewhere, you think men and women are equal, but once you get into the reality, you see more men are being active, in particularly in challenging tasks like outer space, like constructions, and like Air Force, military services. So that is the natural thing.
How important is physical strength when it comes to constructing the space station? Because even with China's space station, it's still under construction, will be complete by the end of next year. How important is physical strength in that process?
You're mentioning a very good thing. On the ground, physical things are very important. But once you're in outer space, muscles means nothing, because you're in microgravity environment and your muscle is a waste.
So the EVAs, the spacewalks, won't be that much different for a female astronaut?
Steadiness is more important than the muscle and sheer force. So you see the astronauts are finalizing their process, and they're going to close the hatch, and then the service staff will be exiting this facility and getting ready for launch. In fact, it's not only getting ready for launch. The astronauts are, in fact, in preparation for 2 things: launching and escaping. So they're constantly in their mind that they're ready to escape at any moment in case of dangers. And with a command, with a single command, they can escape at any stage.
And the escape tower works, what, in the first 120 seconds during the flight? That's the window they have?
That's basically 3 stages of escaping. Once is the slide off into the bunker, and that's the first thing that prior to launch. During the 0 second launch, all the way to the 130 seconds, before they drop the escape tower, that's the escape tower that can drag the capsule away for safe landing with parachutes. And then after that will be a re-entry safe landing with the capsule itself and the deployment of parachutes on board the capsule itself. So 3 stages of safety precautions.
And has the escape system ever been tested? I mean, the rocket hasn't failed a single mission, a single manned mission. It has a pretty good tracking record. But what about, testing procedures? Have they tested it?
Tested times after times and after times.
Wow.
Escape tower is a solid booster, as Yu Guang have just mentioned. There are a few solid boosters that can provide very strong thrust, and that can be quicker than the rocket speed itself, and then drag the capsule itself on top of the rocket itself.
Far away enough
to deploy the parachute and land safely on the ground. So,
actually speaking, for China aerospace, due to the Mr. Yuan Jiajun many years before, he mentioned that the first important test of the China manned spacecraft program is the zero altitude emergency escape test. As Yan Song has mentioned, use the solid rocket engines on the tower to have this kind of escape. It used some explosive to cut the connection between the between the re-entry capsule and the propulsion module from this level, and then the emergency escape system drags the whole payload fairing and also the orbital module and the re-entry capsule far from the rocket. And then, as Yan Song has mentioned, then the other option is the cutting of the orbital module and the re-entry capsule. Cut again.
Professor Yang, we are 2 hours away from the launch of that rocket. It's now 10:23 p.m. Beijing time. All 3 taikonauts have entered into the capsule and have seated into their positions. And just now the visuals showed us they were busy with final preparations inside the capsule right now. We are 2 hours away.
Yes,
from the launch.
Exactly. So you see that about 6 hours, T-minus 6 hours before the launch, some special cargoes will be put into the orbital module. And then after that, we've already seen the procedure that the crew entering the capsule. And usually at this moment, they will check, as I mentioned, the tight ceilings of their IVA spacesuit to ensure their safety. And then they will have the communication test. To test if the voice communication with the command center is smooth enough.
I'm always curious about this part because they seem to be flipping through that manual.
What's on that manual?
I want to see that manual, and I always assume they would know pretty much everything in the manual by now, but they're still flipping through it.
Like how many items on that checklist?
Because it's very complex and has many steps. So each step is very important, very critical for their safety and for the normal operation of the spacecraft.
This is similar to takeoff of the airplanes. Before you take off the airplane, there are many things to check on the checklist. First, you'll have to open the flaps, and you have to make sure the engine is running well, and the communication does well, and also passengers on their seat, and safety sets have been secured and everything. So that is like a pre-flight list,
a to-do list.
A to-do list, and then every moment you have to do the right thing.
I guess they have to do everything meticulously. That's what space flight is a risky business after all.
And they have sufficient time to do it. 2 hours is a lot of time to check off a lot of items on the to-do list.
I'm sure they have all the list in their mind already, but they have to do it physically.
So what can we expect in the next 2 hours? Their face shields are still up. They're not strapped in yet. They can still move freely in the capsule.
And
what's going to happen next?
maybe about T-minus 40 minutes, their safety belt will be fastened, and they will check this. You know that during the flight there will be a very violent vibration. So the fasten the seat belt is very, very important to ensure their safety. And also, they will check their status, including their healthy conditions, because you know that there are sensors on their bodies and also on the spacesuit, and the ground staff can check their status very carefully. So all this checking must be done in a very short period. And as you mentioned, they have a manual, and also they check their step by step. And at the meantime, you know that we've seen the cameras on inside the cabin. And also at this moment, the rocket itself and the spaceship is checking its status. So maybe several hours before, some of the critical system has already been powered on. Some batteries are recharging now, recharging the batteries. And also in some cases, for certain minutes, for instance, maybe several minutes before the launching, the power supply will from the ground cables to the vehicle itself. So these are also very important steps for different subsystems. For instance, maybe the control system and also the telemetry system use different power supplies.
And as you were speaking, Professor Yang, they were fixing these orange belts on their thigh. Are those protective or protection belts?
华山第一次综合检查5分钟，准备完毕。
And they were also holding those tubes.
Yes.
Those
you know that's as you have already asked previously. Outside the cabin, they have a case to provide ventilation.
Right.
At this moment, they must connect many cables and also many pipes to their spacesuit. At this moment, you see that the oxygen supply and the ventilation is provided by the cabin itself.
我是东风，景山
Judge
请讲。
is pulling off that stick
景山
now.
央
After they
一
put on the
天路
gloves,
及
it's
长江
hard for
3
them
号
to press
第
on
一次
any
综合
button,
检
so
查
they will
5 分
use
钟
that
准备完
stick
毕
to。 operate on the
东风明白。
control panel.
You know that Commander Judge Gang,
各位，
his
我是东风。
hometown is in
收集5分
northeast
钟的
of
本情况
China, so he's
08
a
号
man with
5 分
good
钟
humor.
准备完毕。
太原
He always
5
speaks
分钟
Chinese.
准备完毕。
渭南
Yes,
5 分
yes.
钟
exactly.
准备完毕。
I wanted to ask that.
5分钟
Who
准备完毕。
is the serious
天
one
津
of the crew? Who
5 分
is
钟
the
准备
one
完
who
毕。
can crack a few jokes?
5分钟
You
准备完毕。
know, I would imagine they
5分钟准备
would
完毕。
want to have, you know,
5
a
分钟
mixed
准备完毕。
profile of
5号
mixed personalities.
5 分
But
钟
before
准备
that,
完
let me
毕。
get to our guests. A number of scientific experiments from across the world have been shortlisted for the Tiangong space station. One project titled the Stereoscopic Investigations of Nebular Gas is now spearheaded by Professor Jayant Murthy of the Indian Institute of Astrophysics. He is now joining us via Skype. Great to have you with us this hour, Professor. Now, you are leading an experiment which will study the area between stars. Please explain to our viewers what this entails.
So what we have is when you look up in the sky, of course, all you see are stars. You see the bright things. But there's a lot of space between stars. And that space is filled with dust. Not dust like you have in your living room, but cosmic dust. And this is really the building blocks of life, the cosmic dust. And you have a lot of gas. And most of that gas is
第一
hydrogen.
次综合检查
But you
1分
also
钟准
get
备。
other gas like metal, like helium and iron and so on.
50
And
秒
so。what we want to do is we want to look at those elements, and we want to find out what the temperature, the density, and the abundance,
40 秒
the amount of that material is. So really what we do is we find out the physics of that space between stars.
30秒。
Professor, it's Zhong Shi in the studio, and I understand the equipment for that is being built at present to be mounted on the space station next year. Construction of China's space station is still underway. Will your institute be looking for any status updates on this mission, the mission of Shenzhou-13?
6、5、
Of
4、
course, we're very interested
3
in the
2
mission, and we're watching it with
起飞
excitement. What we're
70
doing is we're
2
going
小
to
时
go ahead
2
and
9
prepare
分
our
53秒
our
8 6 4
experiment.
毫秒
And we should
2
be
小
ready
时
by the
2
end
9
of
分
2022.
53秒8
So
6 4
we
毫秒。
hope that we will deliver to the Chinese space station by the end of 2022, and we launch in 2023. But either way, we will be ready. we plan to be ready regardless of any other factors.
And also talk to us, Professor, about the experience of collaboration between your institute and the Chinese space program.
We've been talking to the Chinese program since for the last 2 years or 3 years, and unfortunately, our program is running a little slow because we've had a pretty bad experience with COVID. But nevertheless, we're talking to them. We just sent them our design, the design for our instrument, and we hope to hear back from them soon. So we talk to them on a regular basis. We tell them what we're doing, and we ask for information about the space station. So everything is working well.
Professor, on top of your own work, we know 8 other projects have also been shortlisted. What are you looking forward to finding out on this mission? Are there any experiments you particularly are interested in to watch being conducted on the space station?
The big astronomy payload is the one from the no, I can't remember its name, but from the Europeans, and this is a follow-up to a gamma ray experiment that they've had before. So that is very interesting for us. But in general, we are very we're very excited by this opportunity to fly in the space station because of the chances it gives to institutes like ours, to groups like ours. See, we're a small group, like many of the other groups on the space station, and when the opportunity came to get a launch through the UN Office of Outer Space Affairs, that we have student-built experiments, as are many of the other payloads. And so this gives an opportunity for the students to get their work out into space. And so that's what really excites us, the chance that, this opportunity that it gives for especially the younger members of our team and of the other teams.
All right, thank you so much for these insights, Professor J.N. Murthy of the Indian Institute of Astrophysics. And if you're just joining us, you're watching our special coverage of the Shenzhou-13 mission. The rocket is expected to launch at 23 minutes past midnight. We are a little less than 2 hours till takeoff. And let's talk about the long-term stay this time for this mission, right? The astronauts will be spending their New Year, their Spring Festival up there on the space station. And it's said that ground staff have prepared some gift package for them, so it'll be a surprise for all the astronauts. Professor Yang, do we know what might be in that surprise package?
Well, you know that Yaping is a girl. She likes sweet food. So I believe that during the Tianzhou-13 mission, they must have some food, especially for her. And also, Yaping also confirmed that there will be dumpling during the New Year.
Oh,
so I believe that they will have the very delicious food. And also, Ms. Huang Weifen, also the chief designer of the astronaut system, has also mentioned that there are so many food that there will be different for every meal for even 1 week. So each meal is different. You know that the Chinese food is the best one in the world. So I believe what she mentioned is true. And also, you know that the 3 astronauts come from different places. Mr. Ye Guangfu comes from Sichuan province. I believe that he prefer the spicy food. So I think there are also some food for him.
Yeah, with the last mission, we already had a variety of foods for the taikonauts. Kung Pao chicken, they have apples, a lot of fruits.
Yu xiang rou si fish flavored pork slices. I love it.
So the work might be hard, but they don't have to do it without tasty food.
You know that these foods are specially designed. The reason is that, you know, because of the difference between the gravity environment and the microgravity, the blood will be redistributed. So there will be more blood comparing with the ground on your tongues. So the tasting will be quite different in space and comparing with that on the ground. So although maybe the components are the same, but the proportion may be different for each kind of food to adapt this kind of special environment.
Professor Yang, thank you. We'll get back to you in just a few moments. You're now watching this special coverage of Shenzhou-13 spacecraft launch. It's part of China's efforts to build its own space station by the end of next year.
That's right. The 3 taikonauts will head to the core module of China's space station known as Tianhe, which was launched back in April. They will spend 6 months up there building the space station. And Shenzhou-13 is part of China's efforts to complete the building of a space station set to be completed by the end of next year. Our Gao Yiming looks at what to expect.
The building of the Tiangong space station is a lengthy and difficult process. Altogether, it involves 11 different journeys into space.
Justin, can you hear me? You got me?
Okay. Oh, yes.
Talk to us. What are you seeing? What do you have for us now?
Okay, yeah. So it'll be the second space mission with the taikonauts on board this year, and it's also the last mission of China's space mission to verify the key technologies of the space station. Right now, we are at the launch site of Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. The temperature here is 8 degrees Celsius. Feels much colder, and right behind me is the launch pad. Right now, the rocket has been covered by the launch pad, and later, at about 2 hours countdown, the pad will open layer by layer from the top to the bottom to reveal the whole image of the Long March 2F rocket. Well, for more on the Shenzhou-13 mission, this time they will send 3 taikonauts with 1 female taikonaut, Wang Yaping, into the space station for a 6-month stay. And for more on the highlights of the Shenzhou-13 mission, mission. We are honored to be joined by the head of the launch system, 贺鹏举。贺老师您好。
您好。
关于我们这回这次的任务，神舟13号
Regarding the Shenzhou-13 launch mission compared to the previous Shenzhou-12 mission,
给我们讲讲它有什么样的亮点
do please talk more about the highlights for this time?
我们神舟13号任务相
For
对于神舟
Shenzhou-13
12号
launch compared to the Shenzhou-12 mission, the carrier rockets and also the spacecraft, actually they waited in this position for 6 months. And before for standby for the mission, and then later on for prepare for the normal process, and also for the upcoming mission for the aircraft and also backup rockets. Actually, this is all in this new system and process, and this is also our new way of working. So we'll continue this process. So we consider like Shenzhou-14 right now is also ready. Yes, Shenzhou-14 right now is in the standby mode, and also for the other missions. And for the Shenzhou-13 launch, anything else this time? So from the look, from the appearance of Shenzhou-13 spacecraft, actually quite identical to Shenzhou-12. Right now, looking at the performance and the function, quite the same. And this time for Shenzhou-13, we look at this model, and this actually we are doing the radial rendezvous and docking. Talking about the difficulty this time, actually compared to the previous one, because Shenzhou-12 actually is docked with the combined from the front port. So this is the most difficult part this time. And we will finish the construction of China's space station next year, 2022, and we will perform 11 missions. So this is basically one after another in a very tight schedule. So talking about the launch side, what kind of preparation we have done? Before Shenzhou-12, the launch site actually gone through the multiple updates and improvement in order to lay a solid foundation for the following up launch missions. And for the tight launch mission, we had a quite firm team to make sure that we have the same team to carry out the whole mission. Right now we're looking at this is the rockets for Shenzhou-13 launch. And talking about the whole framework construction and why that we need to actually cover the rocket before the actual launch time. So this launch pad actually provides a closed environment, so you can change the temperature before the mission, and also right now our tachonauts already on board inside the capsule. So first we provide a quite enabling environment for the tachonauts before launch. Talk about today, it's really cold. It's reported 8 degrees Celsius. So talk about today's weather condition. Is that helping for today's mission? So talk about the location of our launch site, actually the wind from north, and today is the wind more to the east, so the humidity is a little bit high, and we talk about the temperature is not the main factor. We look at the wind direction, that's the main driver will impact the launch.
So because we're in a place with a lot of wind, sometimes the sandstorms, so we have to pin down the right time, and we have to point towards the right trajectory, and also we have to look closely to the climate information. And this includes weather forecast, and this is also a great challenge actually. So we are going to lift off this rocket. What are the key milestones that we have to look at? Well, there are a couple of key milestones.
各号注意，我是
The
景山
functional test.
景山出
We
轨
need
根
to
数及
conduct
分解参数
a
已
thorough
发出
test
东风。
and a walk around of
东风收到。
the functions of the
华山
rocket.
华山收到。
The outer surface of the rocket, and that is very important, and also the entry into the capsule, and also
各号注意，我是东风。
the
各号
entering
停。
or the
收集
initiation of
第一
the
次综合检查情况。
procedures, and then we're gonna
景山
power
明白。
all the
华山。
systems and
华山
subsystems.
明白。
And this is also a key milestone.
08
I have
号。
another
第一
question.
次综合检查正常。
太原。
So
第一次综合检查正
this
常。
is
渭南。
the
第一次
layout
综合检查
of
正常。
the
青岛。
space station.
综
Tell
合
me
检
more
查
about
正
the
常。
layout of the space
第一
station.
次综合检查正常。
Well,
酒
the
泉。
第一次综合检
configuration
查
of
正
the
常。
青山。
layout
第一次综合检查正
is
常。
different.
第一次
And
综合
we're
检
going
查
to
正常。
launch
5号。
another
第一次
mission
综合检查正
next year
常。
at the very center. We have the core module, we have Tianzhou-2 and Tianzhou-3. So this is this T-shape configuration of our space station. The question, so will this affect the time of the rendezvous?
东
For
风
the，time
我
of
是
the
景山。
rendezvous, there won't be too much impact because we are adopting this automatic docking.
我是东风，
So
景山请讲。
if we are docking from the front side,
景山、
these
江
two
阴、天路
objects, they're
及
in a
长江
linear
3号第一
relationship.
次综合检
And
查
right
正
now,
常。
we are docking
东风明白。
like this, and it's quite different. So
东
you
风
have，
我是
to
华山。
perfectly manage the relative speed
我是
of
东
these two
风。
objects.
华山请讲。
华山第一次综合检查正常。
东风明白。
Tell me about this power system. Is the power system sufficient to guarantee power supply and the normal operation of the 3 modules in outer space? There's no problem to that, I can tell you. One more question about the timing of the liftoff. And last time the Shenzhou-13 mission was launched in the daytime, but why we choose night for this mission? Well, this is because the calculation of the orbit, and we have to calculate where our capsule is in orbit, and also you need to take into consideration the climate information. And this includes the weather conditions at the launching site, and also the maritime weather above the ocean. So based on all those conditions, we have made such decision on timing. Is there any new challenge for the launch system? What preparations have we made since the last mission? To ensure the successful operation of this mission, we have made a lot of preparations. During technical preparation, we started to take into account different phases of projects of the liftoff. So the crew is going to stay in orbit for 6 months, and they will conduct 2 to 3 extravehicular activities. So what are the possible challenges for EVA? Because I'm not on top of this, I don't have much information to share. I can maybe later direct this question to my colleagues.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, thank you very much for Mr. He to join us for this this live show. And we are now at Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. This is the second space mission with astronauts on. So yeah, for more, we will keep you posted with the other experts on the rocket system later. So join us later. Back to you, back to the studio now.
Thanks so much, Jiaxing, and many thanks to your guests as well. That's Liu Jiaxing joining us live at the Jiuquan launch site. Now, earlier, as Jiaxing and her guests were speaking, we witnessed a key step at the launch tower. The top level of that launch tower has opened, revealing the escape tower. So that's a critical moment that happened at around 1 hours ahead of takeoff, so T-minus 1.5 hours. Now, space travel enthusiasts across the world are looking at today's proceedings with keen eyes, and one organization in particular, the Moon Village Association, hopes it can facilitate future moon exploration and utilization. And joining us now is the president, Dr. Giuseppe Raiboldi. Doctor, glad to have you with us. Talk to us about your organization and how the Tiangong Space Station could fit into its goals.
So, Niao. So I would say that the Moon Village Association goal is basically to create a forum to bring together stakeholders like space agency, industry, as well as international organization, as well as university, aiming to explore the moon in a peaceful and cooperative way. So the organization is aiming to pull together all these different stakeholders in order to have a fair, equitable exploration of the moon. As far as basically the mission that we are going to witness today, it is remarkable because we have it really live, and I think this is a very important milestone in terms of, let's say, giving this message across the world. The Chinese space station and the launch that we are witnessing is a major milestone in the direction of global international cooperation, because this is opening up the Chinese space station in a similar way like International Space Station did more than 20 years ago to international collaboration. So we are really looking with a lot of interest and with a lot of expectation that the second crew will join basically the Chinese International Space Station and the international participation that this will bring with a number of experiments from all over the world.
Dr. Raiboldi, for ordinary people watching a manned space flight, they think about how far they are away from possibly embarking on a trip like that. And, state and privately sponsored space travel is frequently making headlines these days. How long do you think it will be before a trip to space becomes commonplace, becomes a choice of the common people?
Well, as we all have been witnessing, space tourism is opening up, I would say, this year with the first launches of Virgin Galactica as well as Jeff Bezos' New Glenn. So let's say the kind of space tourism is coming up. Of course, the cost is still extremely high, but as it was for the, let's say, airplane travel quite a number of years ago, this has been only for few people. In the case of space, there are at least two, if not three, critical issues. One is the cost, but the cost, we are extremely, let's say, hopeful that with the increasing number of, let's say, potential customer as well as technology of full reusable system, the cost will come down. So one of the critical issues is that going to space and going to orbit, those 200 kilometers, is subjecting the body to strong, let's say, environment. So this, I'm afraid, is not going to be like for an airplane, let's say, trip. Is still going to be, at least for a while, something that is going to be for people which are fit. But I think is a very first important to bring people close to space.
And now it's almost T-minus 90 minutes for Shenzhou-13 mission as we speak. All the astronauts are strapped in the returning capsule of the spacecraft. Now, Dr. Raiboldi, your organization emphasizes the collaboration between the public and private sectors, right, as well as different countries. Is this feasible?
I think not only is feasible, it is actually necessity because the government have a limited amount of funds that they can dedicate to space and space exploration. So we do need to increase the amount of funds which are going in the space exploration, And the only way to do that is by having private company involved. In the same way as when the space, let's say, operation started many years ago, nobody would believe that by sending a satellite in orbit, it would have made a lot of money. There is a huge market, as you know, in the telecommunication, as well as the Earth observation, navigation. So now, as far as concerned space exploration, this is what is going to happen. Industry are seeking to open new market like space resources, space tourism, and many others, and this will increase the amount of money, which will then be able to increase the exploration. So it is not only desirable, but it is a necessity.
Dr. Riboldi, you talked about bringing this space closer to people. How do we do that? As media professionals, we are hoping that our broadcast cultivates an interest and a passion in people, because this is truly a fascinating, this is a great cause on so many different levels. But what is the responsibility for scientists? How do scientists foster further interest in space and space exploration?
Well, I think space exploration and space, let's say in general, it's a very fascinating. One of the key elements is to bring this fascination to everybody. So to everybody, including and in particular starting with the children. So one of the key for a sustainable exploration is to have a sustainable stream of enthusiastic people and high qualified people to work in it. How we do it, it is not only one simple action, but there are many actions. But we all know that the image of Earth seen from the moon has basically given, let's say, reason a number of people, including myself, to really get deeply involved in space. So we need to let the people know what's happening, like the moon exploration is happening and is happening now. Not many people are knowing that. So I think the public and the media company like yours have an important responsibility to bring this kind of message to the public.
Thank you so much for your analysis and your insight, Dr. Giuseppe Riboldi. Appreciate your time. And let's get back to our studio conversation with our guests here. I mean, you two are obviously enthusiastic about space and space programs. Now that we see China's manned space program is picking up pace, do you think there has been enough interest on the part of the Chinese people towards our own space program? Professor, let me start with you.
Oh yes, I think space has been separated, in my mind, 3 or 4 segments. The first segment, of course, is satellite technologies, launch vehicles. You know, we launch satellites, what we call navigation, communication, and remote sensings and scientific missions. And all of these are one scenario. So you have a near-Earth orbit scientific scenario for communications, weather forecasts, meteorologies, and many others. And this is for support of the day-to-day life in our people. And you don't feel it, and you take it for granted. So once you switch it off for one day, you feel it. You know, you don't have navigation, you don't have weather forecasts, you don't have telephone services and all that. So that is very important backbone for space programs. And second segment is the exploration program projects. We call lunar missions and Mars missions, Chang'e mission, and Zhurong, and many other missions that we have put into Moon and Mars. And that is more what we call robotic missions to outer space explorations. And third is our manned missions that we're seeing today, Shenzhou-13, ready to be launched. And came all the way from Shenzhou-5. Now we have manned onboard the missions. And also we have, these manned missions are more inspiring to the populations. You know, we have manned in outer space. That is very inspiring and very, you know, made Chinese very proud and made the public very aware that we have a space program. You know, that is the key element of the manned mission. And also, I think in the future, we don't want to exclude the possibility of merging robotic missions with the manned mission. For example, we set a step on the moon in 10 or 15 years. That is not a impossibility, because we have matured our technology so much in the Chinese space station and in the Shenzhou missions, and also in our robotic exploration of the moon. So there's possibility in the future.
Professor Yang, I know you are always on the lookout to make your passion known to people about how much you're interested in the space program because this is your line of work, but you're also welcoming more people to get to know our space programs better, to take an interest in what so many people have dedicated their lives for.
Well, I always think it is my duty. It is the duty of our space sector to let the public know the importance of the space activities. You know that, as Yan Song has mentioned, our navigation satellites, our communication satellites, our Earth observation satellites, all these satellites can serve the national economy directly, and we can get direct returns from these kind of space activities. But for the exploration, either the manned space programs or the deep space explorations, all these are usually the returns are indirect. So we must let the public know that although there are also some direct examples, for instance, the diapers for the babysitters and also the non-stick frying pan, these are direct transformation, and also the dried vegetables. These are some direct transplanting of the technologies, but most are indirect ones. It needs a lot of time, and also we cannot see that directly.
Or there's a major movement there. I think they're preparing to close the hatch of the re-entry module. Is that happening right now? They were taking some pictures, documenting everything, of course, but they will have to first close the hatch of the re-entry module, then the door on the spacecraft, on the fairing. Right?
Yes, the sequence what you mentioned is correct. So the first one is to close the hatch between the orbital module and the re-entry capsule, and then close the and seal the side hatch of the orbital module, and the last one to close the panel on the payload fairing. And also, you know that during this procedure, there are also many other steps. For instance, to control the atmosphere inside the cabin. You know that the ventilation and also the provide the oxygen to the astronauts, and also the thermal control is very important.
Right.
Usually, in a certain step of the counting down sequence, we designed a time point. At this moment, we switch the status of the ventilation system, the thermal control system, and so on.
So air tightness is crucial there.
Yes, it's the most crucial one. You know that the disasters do happen before. During the Soyuz 11 mission, because it is the first mission to a space station in human history. They stayed there very successfully for 23 days. But during the re-entry, because of the malfunction of a valve, so there is a leakage of the air of the cabin. So because you know that at that moment, the Soviet Union cosmonauts did not wear IVA spacesuit to save the mass, and they lost their lives, and very, very painfully.
Yeah, that's disastrous. You could never get things back from there. And earlier we were talking about commercial space travel, right, with Dr. Ribaldi. This year we've seen some great breakthroughs in commercial space travels with SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin. Does China have similar plans, Mr. Xu?
Well, we do have space sectors, and we, you know, I've been using TikTok many times, and we saw many good news. Even the good news that one of the private sector's reusable rocket has been successfully airlifted into 100 meters and then safely landed back. Similar to SpaceX, Elon Musk, you know, Falcon, spacecraft, you know, rocket system. So they are able to land safely back to the ground. So the private sectors are doing a lot of experiments. We do have rocket private sectors. About 6 or 7 companies are competing and making rocket and rocket testings and rocket launches in private sectors. But those are not human rated. What we're talking about, Virgin Galactic, you're talking about Blue Origin, those are, you know, passenger, like space tourism, you know, including SpaceX. They send 3 astronauts for space tourism purpose. Right in China, at this moment, we're still focusing on satellite launching capabilities.
So those rockets developed by these private companies here in China, what will they be used for satellite? But will they be included in government-led campaigns, space programs, or they will be fully funded by private company missions?
At this moment, the private sectors are fully funded by private sectors. and they have money raising mechanisms, and they develop their own rocket technologies. In fact, they're competing with the state-owned enterprises like Chinese Academy of Space Technology, CASC and CASIC. They have their own rocket technologies, but those private sectors are focusing on smaller launch vehicles. As you said, they're focusing on satellite launching capabilities only.
Right. But what will be the impact of the expansion of commercial space endeavors on existing government-led programs? Do you see an impact worth noting?
Well, I would say the private sector development is more of a conducive process. It can validate more new technologies, either re-entry, reusable, or engine technologies. Like methane technology, methane rockets are being tested by private sectors, and that are jointly developing these technologies with the state-owned enterprises. So those are good things and conducive, rather than competing. And you can mature some of the technologies using full-funded private sectors, and those technologies can also be used for future missions. So this has always been good things to encourage private sectors to get involved in space programs.
Will the participation of private sectors also encourage some of the transformation of what would otherwise be exclusively space technology? Professor Yang, you gave some great examples of what used to be exclusively space technology, but now everyday commodities, and people benefit from the process of transformation. Do you think the involvement, the participation of private sectors will encourage that process? And what exciting transformation could we be expecting in the short to middle term?
Well, that according to the opinions of the China government, we don't compete with the other countries, so we don't engage in any space race. So we develop our space program only according to our own needs, to develop our high technology to promote our national economy and our daily life. But that on the commercial field, you see that they do have competitions between different companies. So these kind of competitions, we can name that as a good competition, because this kind of competition can bring the innovation in technology and also can bring the reduction of cost. So I think it's a good thing to see both state-owned companies and private companies engaged in this field. I have a very special example. You see that the first private company in China achieving an orbital launch come from the Parabola rocket, solid rocket, comes from the Beijing Interstellar Glory company. You all also know that I come from a state-owned company, and I have a payload on board this rocket. So you see that although do have some competitions, but we also have cooperations, because I made the satellites and they made rocket, so we can cooperate together. So this kind of competition in commercial field, as Yan has mentioned, will be very intensive, but it's a good competition. As I emphasized, it can bring innovation. Okay, we can just hear from the front about the status report.
及2小时准备情况。长江3号
Usually what
排放4
happens
级，
right now,
浪
we
高
still
2米，
saw some
风力
staff
6级，
working
能见
at
度
the launch
15公里。
tower.
景山
When will
天
they
路
be pulling
长
back
江
from
3 号
the tower?
2小时准备
Well,
完
you
毕。
see that,
景
as
山
your
报告
colleagues
完毕。
at the front has already
北京明白。
mentioned, there are several rotational platforms. So we'll, after the checking of the some of the status of the Long March 2F rocket, carrier rocket, we will turn some arms open. And then you see that, as I mentioned, there are many critical steps. For instance, the transfer of the power supply, switching from the ground supply to the vehicle itself, and also the checking of the telemetry system. So after some checking, we will open another one. So finally, after all the platforms are open, we will also at this moment still have rotational arms, not the platforms, close to the vehicle.
华山2小时准备完毕。华山报告完毕。
Also the cables to control or provide the gas, provide the power supply.
The platforms will open later, so will the retractable arms attached to the rocket. Now, as the current vehicle for China's manned missions, the Shenzhou-13 spacecraft is generally seen as a continuation of its predecessor, both in terms of appearance and functions. But there's one key difference, as CGTN's Liu Jiaxing explains.
China plans to launch 4 manned spacecraft during the 2-year.
北京明白。我是北京，曙光请讲。北京明白。我是北京，银河请讲。北京明白。
13 mission is the last mission during the technology verification phase. So in this phase, we will test all the technologies which has not been used before. For instance, we have already mastered the crew transportation technology, the extravehicular technology, and the rendezvous and docking technology before the launch of the Tianhe-1. But all these 3 fundamental technologies of manned space activity, not all the necessary technology for building a space station. For instance, we've already tested the long-term residence in space by the Shenzhou-13 mission, but only 3 months. So this time, 6 months is quite different. Although it has already been tested effective, our measures to counter the microgravity influence to the weakening of our muscles, of the loss of bones or loss of calcium, and also the weakening of our neural system. But 6 months is quite different. In the future, you know that the routinary change of our expedition team will be 6 months. So it is necessary to test that first. Our measures is the treadmill, the space bicycle, and also other things if these kind of measures are okay. And also nutrition is a very, very important thing. We've already talking about the menu of their daily life, but also we should have other restrictions and considerations about the calcium and also the energy in their everyday life. So we must follow the suggestions and those from the ground staff. And moreover, you see that we have also some very complex tasks during this Shenzhou-13 mission. You know that today's launch, after this launch, it will be the first time for China Aerospace to dock with the space station from a radio docking port or the Earth-facing docking port. This is quite different. You know that during the years before, we have docked from the front docking port or from the rear docking port. Theoretically speaking, this kind of docking, the approaching spacecraft are in the same orbit of the target. But if you dock from the bottom, because the altitude is different, so theoretically speaking, they are in a different orbit, and this relative position is not stable one. So there is a very critical requirement to the whole approaching procedure from this kind of docking. You know that during the leaving of the Shenzhou-13 crew, they also partially test this technology. So they perform the approaching process from the bottom, but not dock. So this time we will actually perform this one. We may also notice that although you know that the only manual dockings by China Aerospace is performed by the Shenzhou-9 crew, Mr. Liu Wang, and the Shenzhou-10 crew by Mr. Nie Haisheng. But you know that Miss Wang Yaping is also a member of the Shenzhou-10 crew. So she was trained before about the manual docking. And also you may notice that she is also the backup crew of Shenzhou-12. So we can believe that she has a lot of practice on this kind of training. As well as Mr. Jia Zhigang. So if anything wrong happened to the automatic docking system, as Yan Song has mentioned, we can switch to the manual docking and ensure the safety and the reliability of the whole approaching procedure.
This is all fascinating. I do want to pick your brain on one specific thing about that robotic arm, which was a big feature of the EVAs the last time because they relied on the arm to install devices and to help them carry out a lot of their work in those spacewalks. Will there be new tasks involving the robotic arm this time? And will it be all, how often is the robotic arm working automatically compared to manually?
Well, you know that this time our EVA will have a very, very important task to install an adapter between what we call the big arm and the small arm. You see that the current arm on board the core module is a big arm with a length about 10 meters. In the future, after the Wentian module is launched, it will take a second arm called the small arm with a length of 5 meters. And it is very interesting that these arms can come together to form a bigger arm about 15 meters long. So we need an adapter. At this moment, this time, the Shenzhou-13 crew will install this adapter or connector between the small arm and the bigger arm. So this is a very important preparation for the future operation of the station, as you mentioned. And also, there is a more important task for them. You see that at present, the Tianzhou-2 cargo spacecraft and the Tianzhou-3 cargo spacecraft are docking to the station. And this time, in the future, you can seldom see this configuration. This is because we are in the technology verification phase, and we need to test the technology, what we call the transfer technology. Transfer the object from the front docking port to the side berthing port. So this is very important as a backup measure for the future construction of station. You know that the Wentian module and the Mengtian module should first dock to the front docking port and then transfer to the side berthing port. So this procedure, we must ensure the success rate. Usually, we use the transposition mechanism, which can be recognized as a very small robotic arm. This is a major measure. But we also have backup. If the transposition mechanism does not work, we still have the big arm to help the transfer. But we must test that first. So this time, our Shenzhou-13 crew will monitor this transfer. Maybe it is an automatic one, but it can be well monitored by the astronauts. And also, we will test the technology of remote operations, either by the ground crew or by the astronauts.
And you're now looking at the live picture of the control center. Earlier, we did see some weather data being shown up on that big screen up there. Wind speed is 4.3 meters per second. Temperature is 7.1 degrees Celsius, much cooler than the previous mission, Shenzhou-12 mission. Visibility 30 kilometers. Pretty nice weather for a launch. And you're now watching the special coverage of Shenzhou-13 spacecraft launch. 3 taikonauts will shortly be lifted into space as part of China's efforts to build its Tiangong space station.
They have entered the capsule and are ready for takeoff. Let's now take a quick look back.
出发。是。
告注意，收集2小时准备情况。0号。
2小时准备完毕。
太原。
2小时准备完毕。
渭南。
2小时准备完毕。
青岛。
2小时准备完毕。
天津。
2小时准备完毕。
酒泉。
2小时准备完毕。
青山。
2小时准备完毕。
双城。
2小时准备完毕。
5号。
2小时准备完毕。
天仓。
2小时准备完毕。
北京，东风报告。
我是北京，东风请讲。
东风2小时准备完毕。
北京明白。
Be staying there for 6 months this time. This is a long-term stay,
Double
right?
the time of the Shenzhou-13 crew.
And the scientists and engineers have prepared everything. Professor Yang, yesterday I heard this from, there's a major movement coming up. They're closing the hatch of the fairing.
Yes.
So this really signals we're entering the final preparations there.
Yes, and you know that usually at T-minus 30 minutes, the ground staff will leave the launch complex. So this will be a very important procedure.
Have they completed the airtightness check of the entire
Of course,
spacecraft by now?
they already checked the airtightness of the both two hatches on the orbital module. So at this moment, you know that this is not a very strict one for the panel, this panel on the payload fairing. So this will be the final step.
Sometimes the international community sign their fairings off, you know, when they close it.
Autograph.
Autograph, yes.
But after in space, the fairing will be deployed, right? They will be burned off during re-entry.
But for SpaceX, they will recover their payload fairings. Maybe we will do this in the future. They will. So they use parachute.
Wow, okay.
And a boat with a net, you know, they could catch it.
That's fascinating. Now back to our my first question back there. So I heard this from the press conference yesterday. They have prepared 4,800 backup plans in case of emergency happen at the space station. And in the worst case scenario, if the Shenzhou-13 spacecraft failed too, together with the space station, the ground staff could launch a rescue spacecraft to get our astronauts back. Professor Yang, talk to us about those emergencies that they could face up there when they're on board the space station.
As you mentioned, actually speaking, currently at this moment, our Shenzhou-14 spaceship and with together with Long March 2F Y-14 carrier rocket has already in the VAB, in the vehicle assembly building, is already there. So it is a backup for emergency rescue mission. But you know that during the Shenzhou-13 mission in orbit, there are many emergency cases that possibly can happen. For instance, the leakage is the most serious one. So the first thing first to ensure the safety of the lives of our astronauts
Professor Yang, sorry to jump in here. We're now officially 1 hour from liftoff. As we understand, a 1 hour countdown to liftoff will be announced any time now. Now, if you look at those light pictures we are getting to you, we can see that the first two groups of platforms will very soon be opening, revealing the rocket that will be launched in 1 hour's time. And later, we will be able to get a full view of the rocket booster. We'll get all those live images to you as they become available. Let's also bring in CCTV reporter Ning Hong, who is near the launch side. Ning Hong, 1 hour till liftoff. What can you see? What's happening on the ground there?
Yes, it's 1 hour countdown, but if you could see the CCTV feeds that inside the launch pad, you could see that there are still engineers doing the last-minute checks on the rocket, and now not just the system and the electric system or communication systems, people are using torchlights to check the surface of the rocket, and the CZ-2F rocket is so far the most reliable rocket, especially designed to launch for manned space missions, and so far it has sent 12 manned spaceships into space, and this is the 13th ship. And also in the meantime, this is the 1 hour countdown. So what is happening, what is going to happen now is that you can see the rotating platform has opened, the upper section has opened, And from now on, the rest part of the rotating platform will open one by one to reveal the rocket. And you could easily identify the rocket from other kinds of modules because it has a pointing head. That is the escaping tower for manned spaceships, and it will help the taikonauts to escape the rocket in time of emergency during the lift-off. And well, it's a little bit windy now, but according to weather reports, the best window will be 23 past 12 o'clock. That's less than 1 hour now. So we are all expecting, now the taikonauts are all inside the spaceship. And after 10 minutes after liftoff, the spaceship will separate from the rocket and enter the orbit. By then, we know that it will be a successful mission. And that's what I found here. Back to you.
Nihal, appreciate that update. We hope to check back in with you later in the program. Now, as you heard, 1 hour to go before China's next mission to space. All 3 crew members have entered the space capsule. Final preparations are underway. Let's learn more about what's happening on the ground with our studio guests. In this 1 hour time, what will they be doing? The pictures show us that they are chilling in the capsule, all strapped in. They still have the manual open on their thighs. What are they doing at this moment?
Well, they will perform the audio check several times. This is very important to ensure a very smooth communication between the command center and the astronauts inside the cabin. This is first. So as I mentioned, they also will check the when they close their helmet, they will check the tightness of the aviation spacesuit. And also, you know that as you already mentioned, maybe at T-minus 45 minutes, they will check the safety belt if it is well fastened. And also, you know that at this moment, not only the astronauts are preparing, they have a lot of work to do, but also we have some very critical tasks for the rocket and also for the Shenzhou spacecraft. You know that at this moment, the environmental control and the life support system is already working. So, currently speaking, the working of the spacecraft is based on the power supply from the cables connected to the ground. And several minutes later, maybe it will be the power will change, switched from the ground to the batteries on board the Shenzhou spaceship. And also at the meantime, the rocket is also checking its own status. For instance, the telemetry system, the servo units on the rocket engines, and also the pressure inside the fuel tanks. So after this kind of check, also there were some changing or switching of the status. For instance, the power supply may be some system from the ground to the vehicle itself, and also and so on. As I mentioned, the last one will be rotated away will be the arms, which have some service cables and pipes.
5分钟准备完毕。
天津
5分钟准备完毕。酒泉5分钟准备完毕。青山5分钟准备完毕。双手5分钟准备完毕。5号
5分钟准备完毕。
Shenzhou-13 spacecraft, Mr. Xu, have there been any innovations compared to the previous ones?
Well, innovations in terms of spacesuit, in terms of electronic components and the power supply systems, and all have been upgraded from the previous version. Of course, we need, you know, like you going to have mentioned that the power supply, and also you mentioned that it's from umbilical cores, still from the ground, but you need a pretty large battery to provide the power for the astronauts. What they're seeing with the lights, the instrument itself, the oxygen flow, the temperature control, all of these needs to have a very good and powerful battery to support it.
Right.
And once you leave the ground, you rely on the battery pack that you carry on board, and that is all true before you extend the solar array to collect more powers from the sun. So the battery is very important for this mission. In particular, you know, for manned mission, you need life support system to work.
Right.
And that's based on power.
Yeah, speaking of that, because this is a long-term mission, they cannot just bring up all the oxygen and water. They will need to stay up there. They have to rely on regenerative life support. How does it work?
Exactly. And discussing as it sounds, but you need to recycle everything. even urines and everything. So
drink your urine.
Yeah.
So
Not
your
directly,
body
but
waste.
there's a system of ecological, and system to recycle everything. But to maximize usage of all of that. But the good thing is that we still have the Shenzhou cargo ship that is coming up with the fresh fruits. You can't recycle that. Like an apple or something, but you can plant something, some vegetable that can grow very quickly in 30 or 40 days. That is edible. And it's still we're in the experimental process. Lots of universities are doing this. They close the environment and they grow vegetables and they stay there. They for a sustained period of time. For example, Beihan's lunar experimental capsule, and they have 3 students there for 6 months. And they grow their own plants, and they use the solar power.
So what happens to those garbage? How do they handle garbage and also dirty laundry? They don't get to wash clothes up there, right? How do they handle that?
How do they handle that? I mean, dirty laundries.
Well,
do they just throw them away?
第二次综合检查正常。第二次综合检查正常。第二次综合检查正常。青岛。第二次综合检查正常。天津。第二次综合检查正常。酒泉。第二次综合检查正常。青山。第二次综合检查正常。双城。第二次综合检查正常。5号。
第二次综合检查正常。
also have condensation water from the our sweat and from the water vapor inside our those we breathe out from our lungs. So all this water get from the condensation water and from the distillated water from the urine will be further purified by some filters and other measures, and then it can be drinkable. So, but it is maybe not necessary for you to drink it, but we can use this water to produce oxygen with electricity. And also, not only the electricity, not only the oxygen can be produced by the astronauts, but the hydrogen can also be used to get oxygen from the carbon dioxide we collected from those by the astronauts.
Wow, I have a lot of respect for our astronauts up there.
Absolutely.
Now, the 3 taikonauts will conduct a series of scientific experiments during their 6-month stay, and that needs good teamwork. They have been trained in tactic cooperation techniques and are confident they can successfully complete the mission.
The Shenzhou-13 crew will have to perform 2 to
北京，景山报告。
我是北京，景山请讲。
景山报告，测量船当前海况及1小时准备情况。长江3号海况4级，浪高2米，风力3级，能见度15公里。景山，天路，长江3号1小时准备完毕。景山报告完毕。
北京明白。我是北京，江阴请讲。北京明白。
北京，华山报告。
我是北京，华山请讲。
华山1小时准备完毕。华山报告完毕。
北京明白。我是北京，长城请讲。北京明白。我是北京，天河请讲。北京明白。我是北京，天舟请讲。北京明白。我是北京，曙光请讲。北京明白。我是北京，银河请讲。北京明白。
speak. The launch tower has opened more. The level 1 has opened, revealing the stage 1 rocket and the side boosters of the rocket. As we get close to time 0, of course, we're close to T-minus 30 minutes. We're getting real close now. And you know, the previous Shenzhou-13 mission actually generated a lot of interest among people. People love to watch astronauts doing even nothing there.
Because they're having a 5-year hiatus before that manned flight.
Yeah, they're fascinated. You know, they're super interested in life on life in space. So, do they have a routine living in space? What factors were taken into consideration when deciding a routine for the astronauts living in space?
Well, as we know that the astronauts, once you're in microgravity environment, you lose your bone mass, calcium, your muscles, your cardiovascular system weakens, your nervous system weakens, like you said, their tongue will swell. So there are many physical changes. So you have to adopt the space environment in appropriate ways for daily life. So we have just heard that there's 1 hour preparations. So the astronauts, once they're in space, they will be working and exercising and sleeping as a routine, similar to the timing of the ground. And they're adapting to such a timing so that there's a Beijing time, and they also wake in the Beijing time, and overnight they sleep at the same time. So they're working in synchronized way with the ground crew and supporting crew in the ground.
Right, and we do have a female astronaut this time. Are they preparing any, supplies, especially for the lady?
Well, I did heard that they shipped a lot of cosmetic products over there, yes. And some of the beauty products are only for space ladies.
So makeup is not an inconvenience, right? They can wear makeup.
Apparently so.
On a daily basis.
And Yaping was mentioning in her interview that she said once you're in space, you're off the gravity of the ground, so nothing drags your face down. So you have a natural beauty over there. Yes, you look younger.
It's beauty sleep every day for 6 months.
And in fact, as Yuguang mentioned, that the blood flow changes. You have more blood on your face rather than foot.
But what kind of impact will it have, on their psychological status living there for 6 months?
You know that although the Tianhe is the biggest spacecraft of China, with a volume about 50 cubic meters, but still it is a narrow place for 3 crew. So stay in a very narrow place can cause many psychological problems. That is what we discussed, that to have both men and women in the crew will be easier for us to solve these kind of psychological problems. You see that this is very useful, and it is part of the scientific research. In the future, you know that the low Earth orbit and the moon will not be the final stop of human being. We will go to the Mars sooner or later. So the one trip to Mars will spend for about more than 1.5 years. During this mission, we will get more challenging psychological problems. So it is believed that we should have both female and male astronauts inside the crew cabin. So before that, we should test this on the low Earth orbit. So the space station will be a very ideal place to test what you mentioned, how to solving the psychological problems.
And as we speak, the top level and the bottom level of that launch tower has opened. You're seeing the escape tower looking from afar like a lightning rod, really. But it's 8 meters tall. It's smaller compared to the whole rocket, but it's still huge compared to my height.
The Long March 2F, the total length is about 58 meters, and you may notice that the rotational platform on the top has already been opened, and the emergency escape tower has already exposed to the open space. Right. So at a certain moment, maybe several minutes later, there will be validation of the emergency escape. You know that when the ground staff is on the launch complex, usually it is not allowed to switch on this emergency escape.
Sorry to jump in here, Professor Yan. We are 30 minutes away until a liftoff. We should expect an official announcement confirming the countdown. We understand the ground staff are being cleared from the launch pad. This is T-minus 30 minutes. Let's get an update from CGTN reporter Ning Hong, who is near the launch site and who is watching all these developments on the ground there. Ning Hong, what are you watching now? What is happening?
Well, yes, it's 30 minutes countdown, and you can see now the lower section of the rotating support platform has opened, and I believe we will soon see that the entire rocket will be revealed. And now, people are now making the final preparations, including evacuating from the launch pad. You can see now. You see, you can hear there's a speaker telling people at the launch site that this is voice from the commander of the Zero commander. He will be responsible for launching the rocket, the final countdown. And now they're checking the systems, and what we are going to see now is that the rocket will be standing by about 150 meters, about 150,000, 100 meters away from us. And also, I want to pay attention to the rocket itself, because since Shenzhou-12, for every manned spaceship launched, there will also be a manned spaceship as a backup standing by. So the Shenzhou-13 and also the CZ-2F rocket are actually the backup of Shenzhou-12. And for rocket standing up there, preparing for emergency for so long, it's quite a difficult thing to change it into a rocket right now. So the rocket had go through very thorough examination and testing just to make sure that it will satisfy the need of this mission. And for every step people take here is making history. Yeah, back to you.
And you'll appreciate that update from on the ground there. If you're just joining us here on CGTN, we are less than 30 minutes away from liftoff. These light pictures show that some of the platforms have opened. More are opening as we speak, revealing the rocket that will carry another 3-person crew to China's space station.
And they're opening at a relatively slower speed. Why are they doing it in such a slow?
They're already quite quick, because this is operated pneumatically with pneumatic mechanism, and then they open gradually. Before they open, they have to make sure that all essential connections are still maintaining connected, and this is only disconnected at the last minute. So you can still see some umbilical cords, some cables, and some connections, and some holding devices are still there. But in fact, the rocket is held on the bottom side, and it's kept in such a balanced way. It does not use the robotic arm to hold it.
Yeah, this is the close-up shot of the rocket, and for that segment, I think the spacecraft is encased in that part, right?
Exactly. On top is the fairing part, and it is still encaged because some of the ground crews are still there. The last crew leaves T-minus 15 or 14 minutes. So they're still, a couple of guys are still there just in case they need it. They have to attend the crew once it's there. You can see that the top part is also opening up. So we're seeing that the crew probably has just left it, and this is in preparation for the real launch.
It is so interesting for such a mega project to take place. It is so quiet right now on the launch pad and in the environment around it. It almost immediately commands, a solemn atmosphere. You are in awe of what's going to happen with this launch.
And earlier we saw 2 Chinese characters on the rocket, meaning Shenzhen, literally means divine arrow. That's the nickname of the Shenzhou spacecraft, the divine vessel, and that name was given by former President Jiang Zemin. Only on a Long March 2F rocket would you see the 2 Chinese characteristic in gold there.
The Long March 2F is the only human-rated launch vehicle of China, because the reliability is the highest, which have a malfunction detection system. And also with the emergency escape system, it can raise the safety of the astronauts from about 97 to 98% to 99.7%, which means that for 1,000 launch, only in 3 cases, maybe it will have some malfunction threatens the lives of the astronauts. So this is very important. And in the future, you know that because Long March 12 belongs to the old generation of China's launch vehicles, and the new generation launch vehicle is in development. Some of them will be also a new human-rated launch vehicles to its reliability for human launch.
As a matter of fact, all the Shenzhou missions or all the Chinese space station missions are being completed by the Long March 2F, Long March 7, Long March 5B rockets, right?
Exactly.
Talk to us about the difference between the 3.
Well, Long March 5B and Long March 7 belongs to the new generation launch vehicles, which use environmental friendly propellants. We use kerosene and oxygen, or the combination of liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. So the productions of these propellants are water and carbon dioxide. So it's not toxic and not corrosive, which is quite different from the propellant used by this Long March 2F. The Long March 2F use UDMH, or unsymmetrical dimethyl hydrazine, as a fuel, and use nitrogen tetroxide, or NTO, as the oxidizer. So the NTO is highly corrosive, and the UDMH is highly toxic. So these are not very environmental friendly, but easier to use because they work in the room temperature. This called the hyperbolic propulsion systems, which belongs to the old generation. So in the future, it is a trend to use the environmental friendly propellants like the new generation. And the Long March 5B is used to launch the Wentian module, the Mengtian module, and the Xuntian modules. All these have the mass of about, the Wentian and Mengtian have the mass about more than 20 tons. So the only launch vehicle in China is the Long March 5B.
That's the most powerful rocket.
Exactly, and the biggest payload ferry with a diameter of about 5.2 meters, the biggest one. And also the Long March 7 is used for launching of the cargo spacecraft, the Tianzhou spacecraft. So it is very powerful and also can have a capability about 13 to 14 tons to the low Earth orbit. Both Long March 7 and Long March 5B can only be launched in the Wenchang spacecraft launch site.
So this rocket, Long March 2F, is the least powerful of the 3. Am I right?
No, not
necessarily.
Not the least powerful. You know that it also, you may notice that it has 4 boosters. So it is a mid-sized launch vehicle in China, but it is used for launching low Earth orbit payload. It has 2 versions. For this launching a crewed spaceship, the capability is about 8.1 tons. For those launching, for instance, Tiangong 1 and Tiangong 2. Okay, the capability is 8.5 tons because you don't have an emergency escape system.
I believe we have a full visual of the Long March 2F rocket as the platforms have all opened.
Yeah, the interesting part of these 3 rockets that you mentioned is they are also assembled and integrated and shipped vertically. In comparison with previous rockets where horizontal assembly and integration and then vertical launch, this is shipped vertically from the AIT center, so vertically transport to the launching pad itself. And so these are, you know, the purpose of this is because the launching status is vertical. So everything, every component, every subsystems has to be vertically viable before launch. So this is maintaining the same status as we prepare to launch it. So this is more safe and more practical in the international community.
So now, this is a common practice.
Yes, it's common practice in even in Europe and US because vertical assembly is more, you know, more closer to the status where you're going to launch it. And that's
what Yansong mentioned. We call this triple vertical mode. The assembly them vertically and transfer them vertically and launch them vertically. So the triple vertical. But for the Long March 7 and the Long March 5B you mentioned, it's called the new triple vertical mode because not only these procedures are vertical, but also the connection, because there is a very small service tower on the mobileable platform. So all the cable connections and the pipe connections are also do not change in the VAB and in the launch pad. So this is more convenient for usage.
Well, the first Long March 2F rocket was actually launched in 1999, right?
Exactly.
Have there been any upgrades?
Of course, there are many upgrades every time. You see that at that moment, our launch vehicle is the maiden flight is to test the whole the launch complex and compatibility with the launch vehicle itself and the test vehicle Shenzhou-13. But only after some improvements in this launch vehicle, we can launch Mr. Yang Liwei into orbit in 2003. After that, we also have some improvement in the, for instance, the inertial measurement unit, and also with the telemetry support system. You know that during the early launches, we still don't have the Tianlian data relay satellite. Today, we can have the Tianlian data relay satellite, which can provide us greater coverage of the telemetry support. So this is quite different, and this is very unique, very helpful for ensure our safety.
It's T-minus 19 minutes, 53 seconds. We're getting really close. I mean, how reliable can we say this rocket is? A few upgrades have been made to the Long March 2F rocket to improve reliability and safety of a launch. Recently, Mr. Xu, talk to us. What are they?
Yeah, I mean, once you have a safe and working system, you don't tend to change it and upgrade it, periodically. You tend to freeze the status, hardwares and softwares. There's a saying, if you upgrade a software in one point, there's a 15% chances you get a fault alarm or fault, bad part in other parts. So it's a complete system. Once it's completed, technically you freeze that status, and this is why we're still using the same fuel system. UDMH, nitrogen tetroxide, are not so friendly. Toxic, corrosive, but it's safe and it works in room temperature. And once it automatically combusts without even ignitions. So there are many things that we tend to freeze it and not to upgrade it. Maybe we develop a new system, and like a new generation capsule I've just mentioned, need a new launch vehicle that will have another system. Like Yugong said, this is a only human-rated launch vehicle and needs to be maintained in such a stable way that safety comes priority, not propulsion, not a powerful engine. This is 8 metric ton capability to low Earth orbit in comparison with Long March 5, which is 25. So safety has been considered as priority.
At this stage, the 3 Taikonauts have pretty much finished up everything in terms of preparation, right? We've seen visuals of them positioned in the capsule. They still have that manuals in their hands, but they're not reading it anymore. They are waiting for that final moment before liftoff.
You may notice that although the rotational platform has already turned over and we can see the whole launch vehicle, but still you may notice there are some steel arms close to the vehicle.
What are those for?
These arms have the cables to have the signals. We can get every important telemetry data from the launch vehicle and from the spaceship, and to check if everything is okay. And also we have power supplies to the last of some critical systems, for instance, such as the control system. And also you see that we can also provide gas to the pressurization system. At current stage, all the fuel tanks of the of the Long March 2F is pressurized and is in the right pressure. Also, this pressure is well monitored. So only in the last several seconds we can see the rotation of these arms.
You'd also talk to us about this mission. What are the most difficult parts? Mr. Xu earlier mentioned this is more like a renovation mission rather than a scientific experiment mission. Is that right?
In this mission, you know that this will be the first female EVA of China. We have already carried the third EVA spacesuit by the Tianzhou-13 cargo ship to our station. This spacesuit is dedicated especially for Yaping. So it is smaller than the former two EVA spacesuits. So this time Yaping can be very comfortable. I can still remember that that we only have limited numbers of training spacesuits near the neutral buoyancy pool. So every time that Yaping's feet is smaller than his male colleagues. So she needs some adaptations.
Sorry to jump in. We have to mention that it is now T-minus 15. T-minus 15 minutes ahead of launch.
And ground staff have been evacuating from the site, meaning that all preparations have finished.
We're entering the final stages there.
Yeah.
It is pretty quiet. Nothing much going on in the comm system. I suppose they have finished all the final status checks by now.
Actually speaking, everybody is busy now. That's the launch.
各号注意，我是0号，15分钟准备。
Yeah, an official announcement confirming
the
countdown of 15 minutes away from liftoff.
景山明白。
华山
明白。
太原
明白，1号。
渭南
明白。
青岛
明白。
天津
明白。
酒泉
各号明白。15分钟准备。明白。
Big system.
明白。
between many systems. So you may notice the voice between
天
the zero
明白。
commander with other systems. For instance, the ground stations in other places, either in China or outside China. And also we have space tracking ships on the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. So all these systems must be in a very good condition.
You see the ground crews are leaving, so that's the last crew that leaves the launch complex.
So after this point, no ground staff will be at that launch power.
The rocket is fully armed and it's ready to be ignited. So very dangerous at this moment, as Yugong mentioned, there are more than 400 metric tons of fuels and oxidizers on board. So it's like a bomb.
It's a violent energy exchange.
Yes.
So there will be no staff in a radius of how much?
Well, this last group, because the control center is about 7 or 8 kilometers away from the launch complex, but launching witness can be done 2 kilometers away. So there's a mathematical calculation that you don't get hit it.
Our correspondent Ning Hong there might have a better vantage point than us.
Yes, I believe he does.
Yeah, but in fact, in Zhou is the closest that you can get to a launch vehicle. Last time I was there to see a Long March 2D launch, I even got some debris on top of my head. They dropped something on your head.
How far away were you?
I was about 1.7 kilometers away. That was
that's considered
very
safe
close.
distance.
Yeah, that was considered very. But
very noisy.
Yeah, very noisy. Yeah, heart pounding. I just saw a launch yesterday from Taiwan. They launched our ABSCO satellite, and also it's very shocking if you're one kilometer away from.
Well, the final ignition time has already been confirmed.
And it's down to the seconds, right?
Yeah, correct. Down to second. You know that the trajectory must be carefully calculated several times and updated, because we should consider the relative position with the launch site and also our Tiangong space station. Because the target is the Tiangong space station, we must consider the relative position. And the basic requirement for the launch vehicle is to, when it comes into the orbit, it must in the same orbital plane with the Tiangong, because this is the most important requirement. But usually they are in different places. So that is why we choose a lower orbit than the Tiangong. So because in a lower orbit, it can rotating around the Earth faster. So the Shenzhou spaceship, after it coming into orbit, will be the chasing vehicle, chase the Tiangong space station within several hours, and then when it's chasing up, it can dock with the station.
And remember last time we were covering the launch of Shenzhou-13, you mentioned that launch window was a narrow launch window instead of zero launch window. What about this one?
Yes, this is also today we use not the zero launch window any longer, because the technology has been improved. Now we can choose a narrow launch window, which provides the possibility, feasibility to other systems, but with a more strict requirement to the launch vehicle itself or to the algorithms and the control system.
各号注意，
But for now, the rocket is expected to launch there, aiming to launch the rocket at 23 minutes, 53 seconds past midnight Beijing time here. It's down to the seconds.
Very precise window of opportunity that's been meticulously calculated, as you heard from our guest, Professor Yang Yiguang, in the studio. We are now about 10 minutes away from liftoff.
You know that it is very interesting that China and other countries use different definitions. In our China, the time zero means ignition. But for US, for instance, for the launch of space shuttle, the time zero means that the lift off. So the ignition is just several seconds before the lift off.
There is a narrow gap there.
Yeah, but the number is very important. What we call the root parameters that you change. You calculate a lot of things according to it. The trajectories, the inertials, many things that navigation is based on this exact timing.
Again, live pictures from inside the capsule where the 3 taikonauts have been seated and are bracing for liftoff.
A nerve-wracking moment, actually,
Absolutely.
for us who are watching. I mean,
my hands are getting sweaty right now. My palms are getting sweaty just watching this. We know we've done this before. We did this only a couple months ago, but still it gets nerve-wracking every time with the countdown.
It gives me goosebumps every time I watch a rocket launch.
Yeah, you can imagine that there's a huge team behind the astronauts. You see 3 astronauts, but the ground crew, the control center, the Beijing center, the TTNC boat, their whole team of ground control systems, observations and tracking and controls. There are thousands of people that are currently working, just like we are, to see the historic moment.
You know, there might be just the 3 of them right now on that pad, in that rocket, but they're not alone. And they know this. They know that they have the backing of an entire team.
Yeah, they're relying on the team to get them out there safely because things are basically out of their hands by now. There's nothing much they can do.
As Professor Yang mentioned, this is a system engineering program. You have a rocket system that we're going to see just going to be lighted up, but there's also 7 other systems that you don't realize very easily, like life support system, astronaut system, recovery system, TTNC system, and they're complete system that has to work simultaneously to make this work.
Everything has to go right.
Everything has
for
to come
a successful mission,
for that to happen.
Is that the moon we're seeing?
Yeah, I think so.
Quite a clear sky. We can see the moon. Yeah. Good visibility. Like I mentioned, 30 kilometers for the visibility.
Yeah, Qiuyan, you've been there before. You know that, especially in summer, the sky of the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center is really clear.
Majestic.
And we can even see the Milky Way there.
The stars, the moon.
I think the site is chosen for its seldom precipitations. There's not much rain there, so you see clear skies. And if it's not windy and sandy, it's a good day for launch.
Yan Song has already mentioned the rain. The rain is a limitation, a restriction to the launch. So the wind should not be too strong, and also it is not suggested to launch during the raining. And after several seconds after liftoff, actually speaking about 12 seconds after the liftoff, we will have a very important operation pitch over to change the flight directions to the eastwards. Actually speaking, several degrees to the also to the southeast. This is because that the latitude of the Jiuquan Satellite Center is about 40 degrees to the north. And our orbit is about 41.5 degrees, the inclination. So this determines the direction, in which direction the rocket should fly.
So, we often discuss weather conditions on the day of the launch. So the most important thing, is it no precipitation?
No thunder.
No thunderstorms.
No thunderstorms, okay.
Not much strong wind, it's particular side wind, otherwise, it'll blow it off.
And that can be predicted as they determine the day to launch?
There are meteorological service system that is just for this space.
But how accurate is that?
It has to be very accurate.
Yeah,
has to be very accurate.
The weather
precise.
forecasting system is a very important part of the what we call the launch site system. And you know that's the not only the wind speed in the troposphere, but also in the stratosphere must be in a very strict limitation.
This is T-minus now 5 minutes ahead of launch. Soon we'll hear the call out from the control center. And you can see the face shield of these astronauts are still up. I suppose they will close the face shield momentarily. And the robotic arms are still attached to the rocket.
Yeah, they're still open their face shield because they can still communicate minutes before the launch. And like you have just mentioned, they're holding a book in their hands. And you can notice that it's still on the first page. I mean, it's a thick book for 60 days, maybe, not just for launch. So for every day, probably they have 1 or 2 pages that they have to conduct.
Usually several
各号注意，我是引号，5分钟准备。
Okay.
各号注意，5分钟准备。
Usually several minutes before the launch, also the ground commander will also confirm whether the astronauts are okay for the launch, go for launch. So they will also check their own status, not only the ground staff. So if anything wrong happened, they can halt the whole launching procedure.
Yeah. They're doing something now. They're
fixing their safety belts.
Fold their legs. They cannot stretch it anymore. So this is the bracing position.
The basin,
position, it is like a basin, the
they
seat.
Are putting down the shields, are they?
Yes, they're fastening their seat belt, I think, seat belt. And they're in the folding position. You know, before that they were stretching their legs. So this is T-5. That means that they have to be ready and helmet down, I think.
That's the live picture of the Beijing Aerospace City. Officials there are watching. There you see Vice Premier of China,
Yes,
Han Zheng there.
Top Chinese officials are watching the launch from control rooms. Chinese Vice Premier Han Zheng and the Vice Chairman of China's Central Military Commission, Xu Qiliang, are at the Beijing Control Center, while CMC Vice Chairman Zhang Youxia is at the Jiuquan Launch Center.
The Vice Premier was also there for the launch of the Shenzhou-13
Yes,
mission.
he was.
Really showing that how important they see these missions. There you see the Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission, Mr. Xu Qiliang. He is watching the launch right there at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, along with other scientists, engineers, and military personnel.
This is on top of the balcony that the astronauts are staying. So that is the complex about 7 kilometers away from the launch complex. So I used to witness some of the launches over there on the top. There's a huge platform and you can stay on top. And there's a room that with the TVs they can see this real status.
And you can hear the loud sound there during the launch.
But that travels quite a few seconds before you get the sound get there.
President Hu watches the launch of the Yang Liwei in 2003.
There you see face shields down, ready in position.
And we are 2 minutes away from liftoff.
And the books are off.
The books are off. A lot of my attention is on the books.
What do you think is going through their minds right now? They look pretty composed, pretty calm.
Send me to space.
Send me to space. I cannot wait. I've waited long enough. I've waited long enough.
10 years for Jiajigang.
Can they talk to each other at this point? Can they hear each other?
They can do so.
Okay.
Yeah, but electronically with the microphone.
Yeah.
I'm still wondering if they have blue teeth. Maybe it's a new thing for them.
Maybe not compatible with our common Bluetooth, but also some similar
secured,
radio
secured
communication,
channels.
with different frequency.
Very soon we're going to see some critical final movements. The umbilicals will detach from the rockets approximately 40 seconds ahead of launch.
there are
各号注意，我是0号，1分钟准备。
The water will
注
be
意，
poured
1分钟准备。
at the bottom.
Yeah,
of
that's the call out, T minus 1.
Countdown.
An
Yeah.
incredible
This is the
moment to
moment.
witness. Yeah,
This is the moment.
truly a magnificent view there.
50秒。
50秒。
50 seconds.
50 seconds. And it never gets old.
And there you have it, the opening of that
40秒。
retractable robotic arm.
The arms are open.
The rocket is completely on its own, ready
30秒。
to take
30秒。
off.
30 seconds till
Blast
liftoff.
off.
Looks like a moonshot. Ready.
20秒。
20秒。
20 seconds away. I'm leaving my favorite part of the countdown to you, Chuyan. You want to do the honor?
Sure.
10-second countdown.
10,
9,
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Together. 3, 2, 1.
Ignition.
起飞。气流。动动。2、3分。5、6分。4、6、9秒。气流。动动时。2、3分。5、6秒。4、6、9秒。
酒泉程序转弯。
程序转弯。
Number of critical stages throughout the flight.
酒泉光学跟踪正常。
Starting with the pitch over.
That's the moonshot.
Very soon.
Yes.
So this is a camera mounted on
轻
the
声
carrier rocket.
USB 雷达跟踪正常，遥测信号正常。
If everything goes right momentarily, we're going to see the jettison of the escape tower, right?
No,
Yeah.
yes.
About
双场
120
光
seconds.
学
So
雷
that's
达
the
跟踪
first
正
critical
常。
movement we're
Yeah,
going to see.
exactly.
This is the
东
infrared
风光
view
学
of the
USB
rocket. Everything
雷
is
达
going well.
跟踪正常，
Taikonauts
遥测信号
looked
正常
fine to me.
东
They are
风飞行正常。
experiencing the G forces now.
How many G forces are they enduring
I
for
mean,
now?
the maximum is during the separation of the first stage, about 3 to 5 G.
All right.
So this tends to be a period where they can experience discomfort in the flight.
Yeah. As you mentioned, the G forces are together with the vibration.
A
Again.
movement what we call a pogo, which is up and down movement. You know,
Yeah.
faster and slow, like up and down. So
So
that
that is-
pogo is very uncomfortable.
Yeah. That is because we use the liquid propellant system.
Right. We're about 90 seconds into the flight.
Okay.
Once again, you're seeing the bright flame of the side
So
boosters,
picking up
first
speed.
stage rocket.
So the emergency escape tower will be adjusted soon.
Yeah. It has already completed the pitch over, right?
Yeah. About 12 seconds after liftoff.
You see the escape tower and then the strap-on booster.
Oh, that's the 3D animation of this flight. That's based on real telemetries.
Okay,
there
great.
you go.
Yeah.
The
That's the escape
escape
tower.
酒
tower
泉逃逸
jettisons.
塔分
At
离。
about
逃逸塔分离。
153 seconds will be the separation of the 4 strap-on
轻声
boosters.
USB 雷达
And
跟踪
that
正常
separation we just，
遥
saw
测信号
there
正
really
常。
indicates a successful initial lower level flight. They were doing okay.
双程光学
Not
雷
until
达
the first
跟踪正
separation
常
of。first stage. We'll see this one will be happening anytime.
Right. I think it's happening now.
Separate soon.
The boosters will come off momentarily.
Of course, this is the most dangerous
Great.
part, right, of the okay.
Boosters are off.
酒泉助推器分离。
And then
助推器
first
分
stage
离。
separation.
And then
酒
the first
泉
stage
一二
separation.
级分离。
Four
Yeah.
light
一二级
part,
分离。
that's the strap-on booster.
Yes.
The first
and
stage is
5
already
bright
separated.
dots
Yeah.
over there. The 4 little dots are the boosters. The 1 bigger dots are the first stage rocket.
With
So
each
at
stage
about
accomplished.
210 seconds will be the separation of the payload, jettisoning of the payload fairings. Because the altitude is already very high. So at this moment, the aerodynamic forces is already become weaker and weaker because the max Q has already been passed.
I believe you're getting a visual of the second stage engine. And
The
this
second
is
stage
the
has
view inside the fairing.
Yeah, the second stage has a main engine with a thrust about 75 tons and 4 vernier engines to control its attitude.
On the left side, you can see it's folded solar panel. So the fairing has been
Oh,
separated.
successful
So
deployment
this is
of
the
fairing.
folded
整流罩。
solar array that is going to be deployed. So that's a camera.
双程
looking
抛
at
整流
the
罩。
Right.
Solar array.
抛整流罩。
Yes. And that's the exterior of the spacecraft, actually. Now the spacecraft is entirely exposed in space.
青山 USB 跟踪正常，遥测信号正常。
So fairing it doesn't help anymore.
It has already escaped the Earth's
双
atmosphere
闪
at
光
this
学
point.
雷达
It's
跟
already
踪正
high
常。
enough. And Yaping at this moment can enjoy the
太
sightseeing
原雷
outside
达
the
跟
window.
踪正常，
But it's all dark
遥测信号
outside the
正
window.
常。
Yeah.
渭南雷达
See,
跟踪
it's all
正常
dark.。
But they will see daylight very soon, minutes. They're circling like 90,
They are flying eastward.
光学
So as Yan Song has
雷达
mentioned, you will see
跟踪正常
because you know that
遥测信号正常
it's in a different
东风
time zone.
飞行正常。
We can see the working conditions of the rocket engines on the second stage.
Right. And for a first-time traveler, Ye Guangfu is pretty
Yeah, he's not
composed there. He hasn't even looked outside the window
I was
once.
going to say that. I was going to say that. Probably because it's dark right now.
There's
and
nothing much to see
there's
there.
not much to see. He's waiting for more light so he can get a better visual.
They're going to get the 0G in any moment now. So once you have a shutdown, they have a 0G very.
So when will be the time they endure the maximum
when all the engines were shut down,
okay.
they will experience the 0G. So there is an indicator inside the cabin.
Okay.
And you may notice that because now it is already in a vacuum condition, and the flame of the rocket engines, the shape is quite different from when it is lifting off.
And they look pretty alright to
I don't
me.
know how they do it. They look
青
so
山
cool,
USB
calm,
跟踪正常，
collected.
遥测信号正常。
Just as they're on the ground, no
Just as
G-forces
if
at
they're on the
all.
ground. It's amazing to look at.
双
The
产
next
光
critical
学
movement
渭
we're
南
going
雷
to
达
see is
跟
the
踪正
shutdown
常
of。the second stage engine and then the spacecraft separation.
太原雷达跟踪正常，
First
遥测
we
信
will
号
shut down the
正
main
常。
engine, and then the four
天
burning
津
engines.
USB 跟踪正常，遥测信号正常。
Is there anything that the astronauts can do to offset the effect of high G-forces?
遥测信号正常。
At this moment,
东风
as we
飞
mentioned,
行
it
正
is
常。
in the normal procedure, so the maximum G-force is only 3 to 5. So they have the capability to monitor the status of the spacecraft. And we can see from the animation just in the previous video that shows the radio beams of the ground stations to the vehicle. And at this moment, the videos we can see of the camera is downloaded to the ground stations. So the ground staff can also monitor the working conditions of the rocket engines.
And Flight Commander Jia Zhigang is sitting in the middle, Wang Yaping over there, picking up her manual, taking a
Again.
look at it again.
The book again. So I think the newcomer is testing when to have the 0G, and he's so ready.
Well, that's the fun part, yes.
But with the 4 or 5 Gs, it really doesn't affect too much the human bodies. You get the adrenaline, this thrill out of it. But human body can
That's
take.
the ultimate adrenaline thrill. That's the ultimate adrenaline
That is
rush.
for sure.
青山 USB 跟踪正常，遥测信号正常。
12 or 13 Gs.
And even more so for the first comer, for the first-time traveler, Ye Guangfu, right? He's done years
渭
and
南
years
雷
of
达
training,
跟踪正
but
常
this。time he won't be flying in a simulator no more. This is the
听到
real
US 太
deal.
原雷达跟踪正常，遥测信号
Only
正
in the real
常。
flight he can
天津
experience both the
USB 跟踪正
G-forces
常
and the，
遥测信
vibration.
号正常。
Looks like we have a good burn of the engine, and the telemetry tracking is good. We're going to have a
酒
shutdown
泉
in a moment.
2级主机关机。2级
Oh,
主机
we're
关机。
hearing the call out.
Okay, the main engine has shut off.
Second stage shut down.
Now you can see the vernier engines, the 4 vernier engines are still working now to adjust its trajectory to ensure the accuracy of the orbit.
I keep looking if they are having any kind of communication, because I would imagine that the two veterans would try to, talk the new one through it. They would comfort him, but that's not happening, which shows that you have real
They have
confidence.
complete
They have
trust in
complete
him.
trust and confidence. In Ye
The
Guangfu.
post of the WeChat movement of Yaping has showed this. Support your opinion.
I'm sure they have plenty to talk in the coming 6 months.
And her daughter also comes to the Jiuqian Satellite Launch Center for her
To
mother.
watch the launch, wow.
Yeah.
What a proud moment.
And this is the view of the solar panel still folded outside the spacecraft. Later, we will see the deployment of that solar panel indicating a successful launch mission. And that is usually the time we can hear the loudest cheerings and applaudings from the control room.
Yaping also shows the pictures of her daughter Zhao Yunxi in her WeChat moments of her daughter's daily life, like other young mothers.
At the end of the day, she's just another mother.
Well, she's such a great inspiration for the girls out there, right? A mother, a great wife, and also
can you
an
imagine
excellent
if she gives
astronaut.
another space-based lecture to all the young
听到
Chinese students
USB 雷
looking
达
up to
跟
her?
踪正常，遥测
That
信号
would be
正
a
常。
huge inspiration.
Yeah, 8 years
I
after the
believe.
first time she gave the lesson, that was watched by over 60 million children. Imagine
酒泉
that.
二级
Okay.
邮机关机，
That's the successful
二级邮机
spacecraft
关机，
separation.
酒泉船舰分离。
船舰分离。
Okay, that 3D animation is showing you the spacecraft flying on itself. It's a three-part module, a three-module spacecraft, as you can see. On your right is the orbital module. In the middle is the re-entry module where the 3 astronauts are sitting. On your left is
天
the
津
service
上行
module.
停发
Right.，
天津上行停发。
So the next critical step will be unfolding of the solar panels.
Zero G, as they're enjoying now.
Oh, this is the microgravity.
It's already
environment.
in the microgravity environment.
Floating time.
So this is first time Mr. Ye Guangfu experienced it.
天路1号04星发现目标。
So there are
前
no
反
pens
向宽波
around
柱
this
安
time. I
全
believe
电
the,
路已建立。
the last time we saw some
Yeah.
pens
长江3
floating
号
as
双补完
soon
成。
as they hit.
Oh, there you see. Floating manual is playing
Okay,
with
that's a
it.
zero G
天路1
indicator.
号04星跟踪开始。
That's the point of the book.
The point of
Whose book is that?
Ye
Ye Guangfu.
Guangfu's.
So he's showing off.
Yeah, he's showing
He's
off.
showing off
he
a
is-
little bit.
Now he
Now
is a
that
naughty
they're
听
boy.
到
enjoying-
USB 雷达跟踪正常，遥测信号正常。
Now, the minute it asks for the pen
What
is
picture do
happening.
you want?
Yes.
So he has fulfilled his dream to come into outer space.
You can tell who's the new person among the crew. I mean, look at the other two.
Well, you see that Mr. Ye
长江3号
Guangfu
跟
is
踪正常，遥
fourth
测信号正常。
astronaut of China
长江3
coming
号
to orbit
跟踪正
of the
常。
second batch of
Oh,
China's
wow.
astronauts.
Okay.
But it is very unique that you know that usually we do not release the names of the astronauts before their flight missions. But Mr. Ye Guangfu is an exception because he attended the trainings in Europe, the cave trainings. So his name is well known by Chinese and Europeans.
And China has only selected 3 batches of astronauts so
Yes.
far, right?
Yes.
So Ye Guangfu
and
believed to the second
the
batch.
second batch,
That was being selected when? In which year?
About maybe
More than a
10 more
decade
years
ago.
before.
15 years.
Yeah.
So none of the other members, except for Ye Guangfu from
北
that
京
second
帆板
batch,
展开指令链发出。
Mr.
conducted
Chen
flight
Dong,
missions.
Mr. Tang Hongbo
they're
are also, and together
from
with
this-
Ya Ping and Liu Yang, all these are belongs to the second batch.
So
now
they're
we
younger.
have, yeah. So now we have 5 astronauts who have been belongs to the second batch coming to orbit.
Okay.
华山推轨根处及分点参数发出
We're
顶
seeing
山
the 3D animation showing
顶
you
山
the
收到。
deployment of
东
solar
风。
panels.
东风收到。
We're
太阳
waiting
帆
for
板
the
展
final
开正常
confirmation. Oh, that's the call out there. Successful deployment of solar panels. That's Chinese Vice Premier Han Zheng.
天路
There,
跟踪正
and
常
also the Vice Chairman
遥
of
测信号
China's
跟
Central
踪正
Military
常
Commission
遥
Xu
测信号
Xiliang. They
正
are
常。
watching there at the Beijing Control Center. That's earlier. This is the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. This is the control room. Once again, they're all watching this very closely. There you see Mr. Zhang Youxia,
展开正常。
the Vice Chairman of Central Military Commission, watching at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center.
长城报告，帆板驱动正常。
太阳帆板
This is a younger
驱动正
crew
常。
we are seeing. It's they are on average 6 years younger than the previous crew, the Shenzhou-13 crew. Right, we've got Flight Commander Zhai Zhigang, 55 years
55.
old, and flight engineers Wang Yaping and Ye Guangfu, both 41.
神舟13号，我是北京。
They're trying to communicate with the astronauts. The
通
ground
报
staff.
座舱环境及身体状况。
They're asking the astronauts
to report
health
their health
status.
conditions and the cabin status.
座舱大气环境正常，航天员感觉良好，完毕。
That's the
北京
voice
明白。
of Commander
Zhai
Zhai saying that the taikonauts are feeling fine, he and his colleagues, and cabin status is normal.
It is always the duty of the commander to report the status of all the crew members after it come into the orbit.
长江3号跟踪正常，遥测信号。
So what's going to happen next?
长城，我是北
What
京
can we。expect
通报
next?
座
So
舱环境情况。
you know that next they
天路跟踪
will
正常，
open the hatch
遥测
between
信
the
号
orbital
正常。
module and the re-entry capsule, and they will be more comfortable,
长
and
城
they
报告，
will
座
change
舱
their
环
suit
境
to a
正
common
常。
suit rather than the IVA space, not the penguin suit, but the
神舟
common suit,
13号
because,
我是
they
北
will-
京
it will last 6.5 hours for them to
经
before
地
they
面
go
确
into the
认
station.
座舱
But
环境正常，
Before
可以
docking, they
打
will
开面窗。
wear their IVA spacesuit again, because it is a dangerous procedure for the docking.
For the docking.
13号明白，动2、动3开面窗。明白。
There seems to be increased communication.
Oh, they're opening up their
opening up their
face
face shields.
各号注意，飞船轨道参数注入会线流程启
Getting a
动。
feel
长
of
城。
the microgravity
长城明白。
environment, stretching their
Stretching their
legs for a
legs.
bit.
And the book.
And the
Well,
book
again, I
here.
can't believe they're still reading the book. I
No,
mean,
they have to follow the procedures, yes.
I would love to get a look at that book and what's in it.
Usually, the successful deployment of solar panel indicates a successful launch, and we're standing by for that official announcement.
That's great.
From the launch center, confirming this is a successful launch.
And also, we should check the orbital parameters to see if it is accurate enough. Only in this case, we can the ground commander can
Declare
announce
a
that it is
successful
a successful launch, because the
各号
accuracy
注
of
意
the orbit is
我是
also
北
very
京
important.
根据北京实时轨道与遥测数据监视判断，神舟13号飞船已进入近地点高度200公里，
This is a replay
远
of
地
the
点高
send-off
度
ceremony.
356公里，倾角41.3度，周期1小时30分钟的预定轨道。北京出轨根数
This is a
及分离
playback
点
of
参
that
数
send-off
已向各方
ceremony
向发
earlier
出
today.
东风、
东风收
It
到，
was yesterday
华
Beijing
山、
time.
华山收到，
Couple
江阴、
hours ago.
A couple hours
江阴收
ago
到。
before
长
they
江3
were
号
transported to the launch pad.
长江3号明白。
As we have just heard from background that the parameters came up. The inclination is correct, 41.3.
Yeah.
And then the apogee and perigee has been 200 kilometers and 360?
56.
6, yeah.
Ah.
So that is a elliptical orbit. And then in the far point, the closer point is 200 kilometers to Earth, and far point is very close to the station. So that requires another short burn, and then we'll be able to connect with the station.
Because the average altitude of this orbit is lower than the station, so it rotating the Earth faster than the station. As I mentioned, it can chasing the station and become closer and closer, and finally dock together.
So they are now flying orbit. Do those data sound all right to you?
It's a good start.
It must be within a margin that accurate enough for the orbit maneuver. So the orbit maneuver, we only have a limited delta V, or the capability to change its velocity. So must in a very small range to ensure we can dock with the station.
So the deployment of the solar panels was a good indication, but at the same time, after that happened, the ground staff were collecting and verifying all these data, and until they had all these data, and they were sure that the data looked good, we could expect an announcement of success from officials.
You're still watching the playback of what has happened during the last 3 hours, all those critical moments, right? Entering the capsule and releasing of the rockets.
So at this moment, Yaping cannot receive my message on WeChat.
Do they have Wi-Fi up there? They do have Wi-Fi.
They have Wi-Fi, but maybe WeChat and microblog, currently speaking, is not able to be used on the station because of the security concerns.
Okay.
You know that technically speaking, it is possible for them to use WeChat and microblog, but you know that belongs to the internet. The internet, technically speaking, we can connect to the internet, but also we have many other concerns for security and other things.
Then what do they use the Wi-Fi for?
Well, you know that they have every astronaut have 2 mobile phones in their cabin, and they can control everything to check the status, to check the that we have a QR code on our packages, and we can scan the QR code and get the information what's inside the package.
All right, you're now watching our.
《长城报告》UTC-0状态正常。
北京明白。
天路跟踪正常，遥测信号正常。
天路跟踪正常。
局指挥部邹立鹏指挥长宣布发射结果。
北京明白，各号注意收听。
各位领导、同志们，根据北京航天飞行控制中心的通报，长征22号113火箭已将神舟13号载人飞船准确送入预定轨道，帆板展开，工作正常。我宣布，神舟13号载人飞船发射任务取得圆满成功。
As an official announcement of success has been delivered, the director of Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, Zhou Lipeng, has declared the Shenzhou-13 liftoff a success. 3 taikonauts are on board, headed for a 6-month stay at China's space station. Let's have a look at the commanding headquarters of the mission.
北京明白。
Oh, there you see the officials getting up. They're about to shake hands with all the engineers, scientists. There you see the Vice Premier Han Zheng there, leading a team of officials, congratulating the engineers, scientists who made this mission possible.
That's right, Chinese Vice Premier Han Zheng and the Vice Chairman of China's Central Military Commission, Xu Qiliang. They were at the Beijing Control Center. They're shaking hands with engineers, ground staff. They've commended scientists and other personnel on their work. As Julia mentioned, Vice Premier Han Zheng was also present at the last manned mission, at the launch of the last manned mission.
So after watching the whole launch, how do you feel? Now it's official, it's a successful launch.
I think once the astronauts are in space, we have what we call man in space. I mean, there we are. Great country with the collective efforts. The reflection of Prime Minister in the scene is a reflection of collective efforts from different departments and different organizations. And this is an achievement.
Now we're looking at live pictures of the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, where officials are also congratulating the engineers there.
This is the Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission, Zhang Youxia. He is watching the whole launch at the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. And there you have it, the iconic red screen. Every time it shows up, while we see a successful launch.